Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Channel 17. Today is Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. It is also Constitution Day, honoring the signing of the Constitution in 1787. And given that that's the case, I cannot think of a better guest to have with us tonight than the one and only Derek Jonhson. Derek, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I've been giving liberals hell all day for not putting anything up on their pages about the Constitution. So,
dude, you've been in the trenches, man. I've been watching you on X, and if anybody missed it, Derek had I think it was on Sunday, had another one of his epic X spaces, just going off on the people that don't get it. But it's necessary at this time. We're in it. We're in it right now. And Mark, how you doing tonight, man?
Well, every time you run that open, and I see my girlfriend there screaming her head off, I just flip out over that. It's something I remember well from 2016, and always stay in my head.
Yeah, and it's getting crazy now. It really is, since we've, I guess it's probably been about a month or so since Derek was here. And I mean, literally every day feels like a week and every week feels like a month. I mean, so much stuff to catch up on. But, it was interesting, Derek. One of the things we've had our eyes on for a while, I mean, I don't think it's really a surprise to anybody here. But September 12th, we had the sunshine date for Executive Order 13848. And of course, right on schedule as we expected for the second time, third time, actually, I believe it is. Second or third.
Fourth time.
Anyway, you can get into that. Fourth time. Okay. Fourth. There you go. Fake Biden went and extended the one executive order that literally takes out him, his entire administration, and all their friends. And it wasn't a surprise to any of us. And, you've been all over this since day one. I know you did a roundtable the other day with a bunch of the retired military. And, you've been really doing what you do best, right? Focusing everybody in on the tangible things, because we all go off in so many different directions. And so much of what we do is really, I don't want to call it speculation. I like to refer to it more as logical inference of all the things that are going on. But, you've had a lot to say lately, kind of reminding everybody, refocusing everybody in. There's the website below. Anybody that hasn't been there yet, the documents.info, that's where you got to go. This is certainly the one thing where when people say prove it, you just go there and read. And I know there's a lot of people that haven't been through that yet. And I encourage you to, because it's all been laid out perfectly. So, Derek, what are some of the things you've been talking about lately in terms of the different laws, the different orders, and a lot of the military documents and the .gov sites that you keep referring people to? What we talk a little bit about what you discussed on that roundtable.
Well, yeah, when you're a civilian and a veteran, you try to walk that line of making civilians not feel like you're absolutely whatever because you didn't serve. And then also, the veteran community, you have all kinds of veterans. You have, 1-year veterans, 2-year veterans, 3-year veterans, 4-year veterans, 10-year veterans. It's like then you have your branches. So, it's like trying to get people to hone in on what matters overall in the military. There's a lot of people that's been in the military before. There's a lot of people who have taken the oath. But at the end of the day, it's the chain of command that matters. It's the structure. It's the command, the rank structure. How does it work? Where do the laws and the orders come from? The military laws versus the federal. There is a way that they conjoin, the way they pair together. Executive orders, treaties, things of that nature. But, you'll hear people out there say that, the military, that would be unconstitutional for the military to step in. No, it's not. There's actually a suspension clause in the Constitution that is for rebellion or the invasion of public safety. So it's like there are little things, but with laws, there's laws for civilians. That's why he's a president. He's the president of the people over laws and orders from federal. Then his name, Commander-in-Chief, comes in for armed forces and the military laws and military orders and things of that nature. So it's not one of the things that you henpeck necessarily, but I joke with people. I say, well, he's not really your Commander-in-Chief. He's my Commander-in-Chief because I served in the military, even though he's not technically mine anymore from the standpoint of I'm not active duty, National Guard, or reserve components. He only dons that title when certain laws and orders are invoked. Even when he goes and visits a base, sure, they're going to treat him like that because if those laws and orders were invoked, then he's the Commander-in-Chief. But even when a president is on a military base, or just because he's around troops, doesn't necessarily mean he's in the Commander-in-Chief role by the laws and the orders. So, what's in place right now, that's why I try to tell people, it don't matter what people saying, spewing. It don't matter if they're civilian, veteran, whatever they're spewing, it doesn't matter. What's in place and who's in command are the only things that matter. Now, those people could be the product of not liking what's in place and who's in command. But to me, in my honest opinion, I feel like those people who don't like it, don't like who's in command, if they're capable of comprehending that, to me, you're disrespecting the military because it is a military occupation. Military is working daily to preserve those rights. So what we do is like the other day, I brought up this little book right here. It's a simple read if people will just go by it. It's a little bitty book. It's not big, and it's just little excerpts like this. It's not hard to read at all. So what we do is I've been going back and showing just like this. It says, the art of war then is governed by 5 constant factors to be taken into account in one's deliberations when seeking to determine the conditions obtaining in the field. And it's 5 simple points. The moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, moral, and discipline. And then it'll go on and tell you, these 5 heads should be familiar to every general. So see, it may not apply to you, but if you want to think like a general, you can go in there and go and read these things because this has been praised for many, 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 many moons and years. Then it says, which of the 2 sovereign is imbued with moral law? Which of the 2 generals has the most ability? With whom lie the advantages derived from heaven and earth? On which side is discipline most rigorously enforced? Which army is stronger? On which side are officers or men more highly trained? In which army is there greater constancy, both in reward and punishment? So those are 7 things that Sun Tzu went by. And then it's little things like we were reading the other day. All warfare is based on deception. So what we were doing is saying, look, there's a huge difference in warfare deception versus what some of the people are doing out there all over Twitter, oh Lord, Twitter, X, whatever, all day. The liberals right now are on an unprecedented, uncharted level of hypocrisy in the science. They are all over the board because what they don't realize was like the debate the other night. I call it the debate negative 2.0 because Biden was negative 1.0. They're not real, first off, because when you know the laws and orders in place, and invoked, when you know them, when you break it down and you listen to her and you break it down, they're making the liberals actually support the swamp and the very rhetoric that just 10, 15 years ago, but really not even that, just in Obama, they were all against foreign oil, foreign wars for foreign oil. They were all, now they're praising a woman who just literally said, I have the endorsements by 200 former Bush and Cheney and Romney and McCain. And so now, and then later in that debate, she said, we want to get away from the reliance of foreign oil. So you just mentioned that you got endorsed by all the men who started wars with foreign oil. So see, if you know the laws and the orders in place, Like, you'll be able to go and look at that debate and pick it apart with those laws and orders. Goldman Sachs, President Trump's executive order that Biden's also extended. It's only 3 years in a row now. We'll see if it happens in November. But Executive Order 13959, you heard Kamala talk about China the whole time. China, China, China. Well, just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, President Trump was in Pennsylvania, and he said, my advisors told me not to really harp on this, but I'm going to. And he did like a 5-minute spiel on the report, 292-page report that's been put out by Congress of Joe Biden absolutely receiving $35 million from China, and also Ukraine's in that. All right, so all that's going to come. All this is disclosure for what's coming. All right, he has been, on the grounds of impeachment, and it really doesn't matter at this point anyway, because that's just normie talk. But what it's showing people is that Kamala, for the people that think she's real, she's sitting there talking about China. She's talking about Goldman Sachs. She used 2 references. Just 2, Goldman Sachs and Wharton School of Finance. All right, well, Goldman Sachs is not who you want to be talking about when you talk about the root word. So what I teach people and what us veterans do is try to go, look, put the chaos aside, let all the noise and the stuff be stuff. When crap hits the fan, see, the veterans, we are normally solid like this. We don't shake. Our hands are steady. When crap, that's why I love the Marine Corps. Their commercial is the best. It shows chaos, and it shows all this like real lava looking, background. And it says when there's danger present, etc., we run to danger. While it basically saying while everybody's running away from it, we run to it. That's what veterans are trained to do, especially the Marine Corps, especially the Army, and not knocking the Navy and the Air Force. Everybody has a component. Coast Guard, Space Force, everybody has their lane and their duties and everything, responsibilities. But we try to show people, look, get to the root words, the key words, the key topic of what they're talking about. So when she said Goldman Sachs the other evening, here's a great example. She said that Donald Trump has no plan for you. First off, as if we've never seen a Donald Trump presidency. All right, so that's already kind of gaslighting, but it's really heavy manipulation if you thought it was real. So that's manipulation out the gate, because they're treating you as if you've never seen a President Trump presidency, and gas costs and food costs and taxes and inflation. You've already seen that. So there's that straight out the gate that'll nip that in the bud. And then 2, you get to the root word. She said plan. Then she said Goldman Sachs. Well, Executive Order 13959 that President Trump signed November the 12th, 2020 with a national emergency is the very executive order that freezes all the assets of any organization or person who's illegally funding the Chinese Communist military. All right. The SEC.gov has over 2,500 pages of assets frozen. Well, guess who's been hammered by the SEC the last 2022, 2023, and this year? Goldman Sachs. But guess what the root word is? For not having a contingency plan in place. So here she is saying that Donald Trump has no plan for you. And here's Goldman and Sachs that she's referencing. And Goldman Sachs is the very one who's been hammered by the SEC in 2022, 2023, and 2024 for no contingency plan in place for their people. And it says willfully violated on the SEC.gov and all the reports. They willfully violated. So they knew what they were doing. They willfully violated. Now go back to President Trump in 2022. In his November speeches, when everybody thought, oh, he's coming back, all that big November, it was November the 15th. He did it on the anniversary of the Articles of Confederation, the one speech. But he said, we're going through what I call the pause right now. It's called the pause. We're going through a pause. Well, in the military, we love some acronyms. That's the one thing that trips everybody up is acronym. But PAULS is Public Alert on Registered Soliciting Entities on the SEC.gov. So that's the one that hammers all these companies for fraudulently doing things, depending on what it is they're investigating. So there's one little tiny nugget out of that whole charade the other evening that can be debunked. So that's what we do is show people like, look, and now this is the federal side of it. But the military special operations consist of like your subterranean warfare. Why would quote, I know we're going to talk about it later, but like the assassination, I got hammered a few weeks ago by like people, I was on a show talking about it. Well, I show people that, look, you got to listen to President Trump. President Trump's the one that tells you all day, every day. It depends on what side of his mouth you're listening to. Now, I have to be careful when I say that because I'm all about President Trump. There's two different things that he's laying out. He has to keep civil rest as the sitting president in a wartime president seat for the people. He still has to do that. But then the commander-in-chief side is the side back here that most people never see in the first place. You never, even with Iraq and Afghanistan, people never see the daily operations on every base across this land, across this world. You never see the background, the backdrop, as I call it. You don't see that anyways. So what we're showing you is that it's all public. It's not secretive. You got to listen to him. He says certain things out of his mouth that you can absolutely go tie into like a puzzle and go, oh, that pairs with this. And that right there pairs with this. So you got to listen to him. On his True Social, he has been he codes a lot on True Social. He'll misspell things on purpose. He does a lot of coding. And I tell people, if you look at True Social, he don't have hardly any that he should have over there that actually support him. And there's been rumors of True Social struggling and everything like that, the funding, etc. I mean, that goes back to if you believe and trust the man, then go support the man on what he tells you to go support him on. I deleted Twitter when he told everybody to delete Twitter way back whenever it was. I deleted it. I had to restart it whenever I got a publicity deal, but by that point, I was already on the understanding that what was going to happen with Elon Musk. So it was all good. It was just a moment in time to ban it, block it. So if you go look at some of his tweets, truths, as they call them, he codes a lot on there. Like the other day, he just put a pound sign up. That was it. But in chess, that means checkmate. So, there's little things that he does. So like the assassination part, he said way back, that's why I tell people, you can't be a dime store cowboy, can't be a dime store politician. You have to follow this daily, weekly, monthly. All right. But he said way back here, funny how the past presents the present. He's talking about a lot of things. He's talking about the JFK. He's talking about the JFK files. He's also talking about, he said probably it's probably been a month and a half ago now, I guess, one of the Vegas speeches. He said, we're taking it back to 2020. Well, the same swing states of 2024 are the same swing states of 2020. So that's a code to show you these 4 years have been a constitution suspended. It's been a military occupation. To you and your everyday lives, yes, it's mattered. Not taken away from that. But we pay the same gas costs. I pay the same gas costs, taxes, everything, on everything. No one's exempt from what you're going through as well. So it's not like all of us on the screen over here are exempt from going through everyday life like you have. It is everyday life. But when you see the bigger macro picture, the airplane ride looking down with someone who can say, hey, this is what you're looking at all the way down there, then it'll make that turbulence or whatever you're going through a lot, not as scary. Like that, I always use the aircraft when you're flying. I've never been on any aircraft that I have not had the worst turbulence. So don't fly with me if you hate turbulence. Don't ever fly with me anywhere. I get the worst, crappiest rides. So, but I tell people, the first flight I ever was on, that there was extreme turbulence. There was a guy over to the left. He handed me a card, and I looked at it, 1,000,000 miles. He had more, but it was way over 1 million. He said he was closer to 2 million flying than 1 million. And he said, when I get scared, you can get scared. And he put his headphones back on. Yep. He had his window shut, and he was sitting there on his computer watching a movie. And just We're bouncing all over the sky. And he just sit, and I'll never forget it. But if I didn't use my common sense to go, now I could have been chicken little and thought, well, this might be that one flight that we're going down. This might be your flight. But if you flip it to positive and optimistic, then I go, and this dude's been in the sky a lot, right? The odds of it happening are not there. So you just flip that script. So it's the same thing with what President Trump's going through. I tell people, don't let your love for President Trump stand in the way of understanding what the dash is, because the dash is still the love for President Trump. The dash ain't perfect. It's had some hiccups. It has turbulence. It has things military does. But overall, the grand scheme of things, that if God allows all of us listening and watching to live to be old men, then you're going to see this play out. And you're going to have all those nuggets somewhere along the way. I don't know if they're going to do them all in a day, 2 days, a week, a month. I don't know how they're going to lay it out, but you're going to look and see, oh my gosh, that was a funeral service on January the 20th. That was a this and that was a that. Because if they didn't, because this is a military occupation, because this is about military regulations and customs and traditions, then it would really be desecrating all the graves if they didn't go back and validate all that to say, hey, no, we weren't using the uniforms the wrong way. This was what you were watching. So that's what we've been trying to kind of hone people in on, is that, look, I mean, I expect hate. I expect turbulence. I expect slander. I expect all that, because there's so many people who don't know that they don't know. And a true warrior can take all that, but sometimes you do have to stand up, like President Trump says. When people are talking bad about you for no other reason, sometimes you do have to put them in their place, right? You do have to be tough. But at the same time, my mentality is, I'm not here still for the Patriots. Yeah, yes, we can congregate and talk, but the warrior mentality is there's a man left behind. Go get him. It don't matter. Just like Forrest Gump. Remember when he went back in and he got Lieutenant Dan, he's like, leave me here, leave me. It don't matter what they're doing. It don't matter if they want to die, whatever the metaphor or analogy is. It doesn't matter. You got to have that leave behind mentality, because I believe that everybody can go, hey, I know how much you thought you hate this man. I know how much you thought you hate what's going on. But if you really look at what's going on and you claim to support the military, you might want to read what's in military laws and military orders that are invoked right now. That's for humanity's sake, not your own. It's for everybody's sake.
While I've been down here in the South, one thing I've learned is there are a lot of people, very red area, et cetera, but there are a lot of people who really don't get what's going on. I've been talking to a lot of people and trying to red pill them as best as possible. And just want to regress a little bit. And if you could give a Cliff Notes version to some of the newer viewers, et cetera, since it is Constitution Day, about the Act of 1871, what a COG is, why we are and have been in one. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's real simple. I mean, I won't rattle too much here. I mean, but obviously that's what I'm known for. I have too much time on my hands. It's really what it is. But so I tell people, look, my grandfather was a connoisseur of military law in our history, but I trace back to, I'm a son of the Revolution and the son of the Confederacy, but definitely a son of the Revolution. And then I have Native American. So, my family's been here, and I tell people that. So you got to know your foundation. Your foundation is important. So what I always like to what I've been doing now is I sort out with something that most people in the South, especially, can get a hold to: college football. All right. So Alabama football fans, I'm a Bama graduate. First off, I'm also a Colorado State graduate. Totally different programs. So one has a brewery in the north end zone, and if they don't even score a touchdown, they're happy, right? Because they got a brewery in the north end zone. The other, if they don't have at least 10 wins, this season's over, right? So you know which one that is. All right, so Alabama fans get all this kind of especially in the South, between Auburn, LSU, and Georgia, you're obnoxious. That's what they call Alabama fans, because we could say we've been in 18 national championships, 29 SEC titles, 50-something bowl games. We can tell all the bowl games. We can tell how many bowl game wins we have, right? But that's not obnoxious, not by definition. Obnoxious is when you claim to be the biggest fan in the world of something, but you know nothing about it, right? That's what obnoxious is. Knowing everything about your school is just saying, hey, I love my school. I'm dedicated to it. I know everything about it, and I support it. So that's the way I feel about our nation. And, so you got to go back real fast. I could break it down real fast. So you go back to 1775, ladies and gentlemen. Our founders started a war for taxation without representation. All right. The Midnight Riders, you saw the book that I have, I named that after, of course, Paul Revere gets more love for being the Midnight Rider, but there were several Midnight Riders that rode on the night of April the 18th and April the 19th at midnight. And they were riding, yelling, the Redcoats are coming, the Redcoats are coming, they're coming, get ready. Well, we know on account that only 1.7 to 1.9% of population of the military back then fought. So there were a lot of people who were sitting in their houses, sitting in their barns, hiding probably under the haystacks in them barns, right? While the others were out there giving them hell, all right? So you got to do your math. We didn't have a declaration then. We didn't have an established military. We did not have a constitution when they started the war. They kicked off a war without having any kind of, hey, this is what we're fighting for. They said the hell with all this. They were so frustrated. They just started a war. Well, April 1775 to June 1775. June the 14th, 1775, the Army. 16 days later, the very first law, basically law, war articles, military law, whatever you want to call it, same thing. June 30th, 1775. October the 13th, 1775, the Continental Navy. November the 10th, the Continental Marine Corps. December the 3rd, 1775, the very first flag, the Grand Union flag, which represented the military first. All right. Those were all long before the Declaration. Then the Declaration of Independence, July the 4th, 1776. Then you fast forward to June 14th, 1777. The flag, the Betsy Ross flag, not the Grand Union, but the Betsy Ross flag was sworn into Congress. But it was for the military first. In the first 51 days later, it flew in the very first, it was the bloodiest battle of the whole Revolutionary War for the military first. All right. Now, fast forward, you go up to 17, not too much forward. So November the 15th, 1777 was the Articles of Confederation. That was your first constitution, ladies and gentlemen. All right. They redrafted that on today, way back then, September the 17th, 1787. But then you had a group of people back then called the Anti-Federalists. Now, their differences were not that great, but Madison and his crew said, well, we don't want more federal government. We don't want the federal government to have more power. We'd like the states to have more power, the colonies, the 13 colonies. So they said, well, draft something and present it to us, right? So Madison wrote more of the Bill of Rights than anybody else, but James Madison. They presented that. They incorporated that in. There were 12 of them originally. So the First Amendment that we know of was actually the Third Amendment. So the first two got cut off, and you can go read those. But that was December the 15th, 1791. 1803, Marbury versus Madison. There's James Madison again. There he was originally not all about the Constitution, and then adapted to it because of the balance they found with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. He goes into the Supreme Court, landslide, monumental case, Marbury versus Madison, 1803. And it says specifically, any statute that bears the appearance of a law or looks like a law, basically, is null and void if it doesn't support the Constitution. All right. So we have a lot of laws and orders in place that need to be null and void. So that was 1803. The British revolted in 1812. We whooped that butt again. It didn't last as long, 2 years that time. All right. And then that's when things started rolling. So when you look at 1849, the gold rush, you look at what was going on right before then in Texas, the Texas Revolution. All right, but you move forward. 1868, it wasn't that long, things started sliding. The 14th Amendment, that's when things started sliding, 1868. 1871, the Organic Act of 1871. All right, it was abolished in 1874, but in 1878, the Organic Act of 1878 was also precedent because it set the District of Columbia as a foreign territory. All right, so when you really think about it, when you think about there's a chunk of land inside the U.S. that we call a foreign territory, it don't matter by the actual dirt itself. No, a farmer could plow that dirt, no different than he could plow. It's by the laws and the orders and their own constitution and their own seal and motto that it's a foreign territory. All right, in the 1870s, so there, see what happened there? In the 1870s, all of a sudden, lawyers had to become part of a bar, a British accreditation registry. All right, so that's, I mean, you think about that. All of a sudden, you have to have a representative to walk in this court, and then you have to have that representative talk to the high judge over there, the higher representative. All of a sudden, you cannot do that yourself. They established this bar. All right. So then you couldn't study like some did before then. The William Barrett Travis, the hero of the Alamo I was talking about, he studied up under an attorney in my hometown, one of them. He studied, and he goes, yep, you're capable of studying the law and learning the law and practicing the law. You're a lawyer, right? Because all you got to do is read a book. Now in the 1870s, that changed. All right, now fast forward. Now that you know that there's a system that's been established by this echelon, a group of people, right? Khazarian mafia type people, right? Well, then 1913, the Federal Reserve was established. All right, Federal Reserve. We already had a Treasury, ladies and gentlemen. So a Federal Reserve was established. They didn't waste any time. 1913 to 1914, World War I started. All right, so they got everybody distracted. Boom, World War I. 1918, the Spanish flu, which actually took my great-grandmother's life. She was a caregiver during the Spanish flu in 1918 and passed away at the age of 21. All right, and so then you go to 1929, stock market crash. You go to 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt, right? So all of a sudden, the original inauguration date went from March the 4th to January the 20th. All right. Then he was the last president to serve over 2 terms. He was in his 4th term, 13th year when he died. All right. So 1933, then you go to 1941, 1942, the War Powers Act. Those are very key. Then you go to 1944, the Bretton Woods system. All right. And then you just keep rolling. 1950, military law became the Uniform Code of Military Justice by that name. 1950. 1951. Well, we won't get there. 1950, Korea started. It lasted until 53. 1951, Congress put term limits on the president, but not themselves. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the Congress is to put term limits on the president. It says the president's term lasts 4 years. The vice president and the president, their term lasts 4 years. They can be voted as many times as the people want them in. All right. And Washington and others had comments about that years ago. 1951. 1953, Korea ended. 1955, Vietnam started. 1961, you had 5-star general, very key. He was a president, but he was also a rare 5-star general. 5-star general Eisenhower had a speech 3 days before he left office called the Military Industrial Complex speech, where he feared that the military and medical, it was also included medical, he feared because of this right here, money, that it was going to affect lobbying, defense, all this was going to affect our nation because of money, right? Because of what it can buy and who it can influence, all right? 1961, that. So 1963, JFK, January, went around that Federal Reserve back here in 1913, went around them, went straight to the Treasury, took $4.6 billion. What happened November 1963? All right, then 1968, we left the gold standard. They created it. So in the debate the other evening, you heard you hear it all the time. Kamala saying that, oh, they're going to take away, Donald Trump's going to take away your Social Security. That's disclosure, ladies and gentlemen. They took away your Social Security back in 1968. they put it in a unified budget act. All right, so they took the highway funds and all these general funds and they all consolidated them. So it'd be like all of us on the screen here and their wives or girlfriends or significant others and all the people listening going, hey, let's put all our money in one pot, but we're going to have one debit card with one PIN. Well, some people might like that, but the wealthy ones in the patch, right, all the ones with the money, they're going to be like, no, we got to have a ledger for that. No. Like chaos, right? Well, exactly. That's what it did. And then when you leave the gold standard, when you print money, you don't have anything to back it, right? So they just said, we'll print money when we want to. Well, the enemy don't work that way. When you get in a trade deficit, they don't work that way with them. And then when you get in a deficit with them, but then when you also can't pay them back, guess what they do? They get mad, they get pissed, they get angry, and then they what? They want your head, right? So 1968. 1971, the Nixon shock. Well, I guess there would be a shock because of what took place. Then you move to 1990. They took that same unified budget and had another budget act, and they made that off budget. So now it really gets hairy. Now you really go, well, where's it going? And who's taking from it? Who's putting back? Who's replenishing it? Right? Then in 1991, September the 11th, 1991. Oh, what a random day, right? September the 11th, 1991, you have George Bush Sr. on a speech talking about the New World Order. Also that same, it was 1991 or 92, I have to go back and look, Joe Biden has a article in the Wall Street Journal about how he loved he loved New World Order, how he came to love New World Order. All right, so look at that. So then 2001, September the 11th, 2001, to the day, daddy and son. What took place? All right, but it was what the day before, September the 10th, 2001. Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, stands on world TV and tells everybody $2.3 trillion is missing. All right, and look how quick. 1913, the Federal Reserve. 1914, World War I. They didn't waste long. September the 10th, 2001, 2.3 trillion missing. Next day, bam, destroy. Let's destroy evidence. The same thing our government did to all our veterans, especially our Vietnam brothers and sisters out there from the Vietnam era when they destroyed the archives for all of those records for veterans, right? They were trying to get rid of all the Agent Orange and all the different things. They were trying to destroy all this evidence of all these servicemen and women as if they didn't serve. So that's a timeline of that. So ladies and gentlemen, so what we know, everybody living, breathing right now has never experienced freedom the way it was supposed to be whatsoever. We've all been constrained. These people up here, they created their own checks and balances. It's not all of them, but it's a lot of them. But then it's not just them. There's a group of people back here behind the scenes, the lobbyists and all these people who lobby, right? Lobbying means they're paying for influence. Hey, I will do this if you do this. It's a scratch my back, scratch yours. But it never leads to anything good. Enron, I mean, we could sit here and name stuff through history where it don't end up good. All right. So what they do, though, to regular everyday civilians, everyday people, is pin everybody on our core values: patriotism, race, and religion. Civil Rights Act, it did the same thing. They used black people as a marketing tool. If anybody should be pissed right now, it should be African-American community because they use their names and faces as a marketing tool. Civil Rights Act is like this. If there's a group of students, 40 students in a classroom, and there's one who is slower than them, God love them, but if they're slower, what the Civil Rights Act says is that that child stays in that class. But also now there's going to be a special teacher assigned to that child in that class. But guess who pays for it? The other 40 students' parents, mom and dad. That's what the Civil Rights Act does. And instead of having compassion and love and understanding that, hey, but what they've done is flip people's mind to go, no, your child deserves to be in that room. Knowing they don't. And God love them that they don't. No one's sitting here saying that, oh my God, making fun of the child for having an impaired situation or whatever it may be, but you're putting the weight on the rest of society. So that's why the federal and the state and local government people need to know the difference in those, what the federal needs to be funding, what states should be funding, and this. So President Trump on the campaign trail, said something that my grandfather and my great uncle, I had a great uncle who was a Purple Heart at Normandy. He was shot like 5 times, stabbed with a bayonet 2 or 3 times, and survived. I mean, he was a bad boy Marine. He was the true devil dog Marine Corps. All right. No one ever knew about it. Most of our family don't even know that. That's what that generation, that was before, obviously, the military industrial complex veterans, the ones that tear down others. We got to get over that. All veterans have got to stop that. Right now, veteran suicide shows that 85% of veteran suicide are men and women who've never seen combat. 85% of that, I think it's 32 a day now, it's gone up. All right, 85% of that have never seen or done anything. So that whole rhetoric's got to stop. So there's my great uncle, Purple Heart at Normandy, and my grandfather. They never met each other. That was on one side of my family and another. They've never met each other. I would hang out with my great uncle on our farm. He was our game warden, and he was like Wyatt Earp too. But we would talk, and I'd talk to him, and my dad, I'd hear them talk, and then I heard both of them all my life say that 200 generals said never again will we let happen in this nation what happened under JFK. If we get a chance to take it over, we will. And on the 2016 campaign trail, they did this on purpose. They had all those Republican candidates on stage at one time on purpose. And Jeb Bush was the one who asked the question, who's going to back you, who's going to support you, and who's going to vote for you? And he said, President Trump looked at the moderator, said, Dave, if you'll give me time to answer that, that's a loaded question. That's more than one question. He said, one, the American people are going to vote for me because they're tired of BS politicians like you. Every one of you get on this stage and you tell the American people what they want to hear, and you never back it up. I'm a businessman, not a politician. I will win the American people over by the economy because that's what affects them on the daily. As far as the military goes, you don't need to know if you're not in the military. Never again will we voice to the public what's going on with our military, because if you find out, guess who else finds out? So you won't know about that. If you want to know, you can join. And then he said, who's going to support me? I have 200 generals backing me right now and more to come. So that alone right there set the tone and the precedent. Now, going into like the stuff like the assassination, I tell people, look, hey, if he was going to be assassinated, it'd have been way back then, because he didn't go up just against a couple little congressmen and women here and there just because we've known about them in our states and everywhere, different things like that. No, He went up against the whole swamp of the Congress and all of those lobbyists, all of those defense contractors, all of the global swamp, all of that mindset. So that should tell you that he has a massive backing behind him, though, of the same but good people, of the people who have been in those positions before and know they're trash and not good for the economy, but also not good for the world and humanity's sake. So that should tell you that there's a massive military backing him all over the world, not just ours, but also world leaders. And the laws and the orders show that. So you got to know that foundation first to know where we went awry. And we've never had freedom. We've never had true suspension of anything. Like President Trump says. I mean, he's hiding it. I mean, he's basically saying it, but he says no tip tax, no tax on overtime. He's basically saying no income tax, ladies and gentlemen, because that's been fraudulent. And if you'll go back to, I think it was January 2023, The Hill, there's your popular website, there's your popular publication. They put out about honoring what the Constitution says about federal debt. All right. So there's a lot that's been showing you what's coming, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, it's a matter, do you want to know now or do you want to know later? But you should want to know now, just because that way you'll be, as what my dad says, humping and bumping. By the time it's handed to you, that torch is handed to you, you'll look like those on the racetrack where it's the team where they're running with the baton, and you'll see some of them getting a running start and they grab it and off they go. That's what you want to look like. You don't want to be standing there going, what is this? Like, yeah, it's burning and it's a torch, but what do you want me to do with it? No, like you need to be running, like paying it forward. So that's kind of the gist of the breakdown. President Trump, he went in that first 4 years. Now this is my opinion. And there's been enough comments by certain people to say that he was never president. I believe he's been a supreme commander the whole time, and there's a way to do that lawfully. But either way you want to look at it, if you still want to look at presidency legislation, he did legislate. He put certain executive orders into place, ladies and gentlemen, that would invoke basically what a wartime president law is, meaning that like COVID was a bioweapon. All right, there's a few things that allow a president to expand their power as president constitutionally. He can suspend the Constitution for one. That's the suspension clause. That's the writ of habeas corpus, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. All right, and then he can expand more power if he had to, but either way, it doesn't matter. You suspend the Constitution, that's a wartime power. But a PED, a Presidential Emergency Action Document. All right, those are pre-planned executive orders. Well, there's executive orders in place, and ironically, they just happened to reissue the Joint Mobilization Planning publication for the military in October 2018. Just so happened that was renewed, but it shows all of who can federalize the reserve components in National Guard active duty. Well, that's President Trump. He did that. Executive Order 13912 and 13919. It doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen, that it's 4 years ago. That has nothing to do with anything. It matters because when a law is put into place, all it matters is who's enforcing it and if it's being enforced. And what's happening right now are so many people have not seen laws enforced that now you're seeing them enforced and you don't know what that looks like. But the mobilization, the president is the only one. He's the only one who can federalize the reserve and National Guard to active duty. That's Title 10, Section 12302, 12304, and 12406. In Executive Order 13912, there's your Title 10, 12302. In Executive Order 13919, there's Title 10, Section 12304. Those are your invoking. He don't need 5 orders. He don't need 10. He didn't need 2, but the second one is an order to the Secretary of Defense. The other one is to the 1 million National Guard, the reserve components. All right, so that makes him a supreme commander. All right, that could last as long as he needed it to last. The same thing with World War II. So it don't matter if it lasts. I know you don't want it to. And no one does. But let's say it lasted 12 years. You don't want it to. 15 years, 16 years, whatever. But military don't work on a timeline like that. Military works on a manner of getting things done and mission complete status. Mission complete, based on what the strategic plan was in the first place. So whatever those were and whatever that checklist is, they're not going to be done until that checklist is checked off. All right, because of men and women dying. They're not going to go, oh, well, we're three quarters of the way through, but it's not going the way we want. They're not going to go retaliate in another manner because of what took place over here. All right. So in President Trump, especially, if anybody knows anything about him, he's going to have that checkpoint. It's going to be check, 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 and it's going to be flawless, 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 flawless as much as possible when it comes to military portions. So, I think where people get lost is the distractions, the noise, the stuff. But then if you want to know, you don't have to be a veteran. You just have to have the initiative, but you got to know the core components of what you're looking at daily. And then like COVID, it was a bioweapon of retaliation by the deep state. All right, because we still live, we still breathe. We're still walking around. We're still doing that. But President Trump, they knew it was coming. They knew there was nothing they could do to stop these evil people in another manner. But from this manner, you cannot create a civil war. You can't make even worse of a panic, right? So if they'd have told everybody, hey, these people are planning to do this, 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 and this, and this, then more people would have gotten a panic mode and no telling. All the good old boys and girls, God love us, but all the cowboys, there'd have been pandemonium for sure had he gone out and said, hey, this is what they're about to do, this, this, and this, and this. Well, if all the people that support him believed him and took up arms, you don't want that. So the retaliation came. He gave them a line in the sand. He said, hey, come across this line because the end ain't going to be good for you. but they also knew that there was going to be some retaliation. Fauci was on January the 12th, 2017 at Georgetown University, 8 days before President Trump took his oath. And he told that group of people, what we know for certain, there's absolutely going to be a pandemic hit this next administration. He told the whole world it's on. He's also lied under congressional oath multiple times. So see, everything had to be publicly disclosed, but there's some things you couldn't do because why? Some people just have to see it to believe it. All right. But if at any point President Trump would have said something in another manner, you'd have had a lot more it wouldn't even have been a pandemic. It would have been pandemonium. It'd have been chaos. It'd have been bloodbath, bloodshed. And unfortunately, that's where it comes to. You just got to have the initiative to read what a special operation is. And that's why I tell people the April 2016 Special Operations Command publication, you need to read that. There's a diagram in there. You need to study that diagram and every line in it. And then if I can find the link, I'll post it again. I've been looking for it. I have so many. But there is one specific page on the Army.mil that has every form of warfare and the breakdown, like the publication manuals for it. And if you want to know, that's what you got to look at, because that's what guys like me are reading. Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, Special Operations, retired Lieutenant Colonel. Colonel Fulberg, Colonel retired Charles Sellers, who was former deputy commander of Delta Force, one of the most elite forces. So that's the stuff that we're reading and looking at, studying, but also looking daily at the aircraft daily, looking what they're doing, what kind of aircraft are here, what base are they on, what airport are they on. And 99% of the foreign aircraft are on National Guard bases, regional, county, municipal airports that don't have National Guard attachments. Some do, some don't. Then they're on international airports with National Guard attachments. 99.9%. Those are all, even though we have a thing called Operation Noble Eagle, which makes sure that certain aircraft are doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're in our territory, there's still a blueprint that shows why they're here and what they're doing.
And unlike every other president, especially in recent history, he does not divulge the battle plans to the enemy.
And it's right here. It's it's on page 18. It literally says, you just said it. I'm gonna read it just where I can validate you. Literally, it's page 19 of the Art of War, ladies and gentlemen. These military devices leading to victory must not be divulged beforehand. So if you want to be successful through anything with the military, especially, you got to know. And that's why if you'll see veterans, if you'll go to gruntstyle.com or one of those t-shirt outlets out there, they got the shirt, "Embrace the Suck." Well, that's something we say in the military a lot. Well, now this sergeant here, that's my memorial bracelet that passed, his saying was, "It sucks to suck." He's the one that made me say that. So when people used to say, "Oh, yeah, he's saying that," I'm like, but embrace the suck. It sucks to suck. Whatever you want to call it, but that's one of those things like the military. He told them all the time, "I didn't make you sign your right hand or left hand to that piece of paper. You signed up for this. If you don't want to be here, that's your problem. Sucks to suck. Get your butt to work." That's how he taught, right? And that's military. So it is. And that's where we are in another manner, is that, a lot of people are going to learn. And I know that sounds bad too in one way, but it's like you're going to learn today, that saying. But a lot of people are going to come to respect the military a lot more because of the process, and then also the information, and then the fact that these people up here never once cracked, especially the ones in command. They never once cracked. They never wavered. They stayed the course. And I think a lot more people are going to come to appreciate the military they thought they support, and they might, but they're going to come to appreciate it a little bit more. So,
absolutely. And a couple of people in the chat did ask, and it's a great idea. They said, "Could you cut out that last number of minutes and put it as a standalone video for you guys?" So I will do that. Keep an eye on Telegram and Rumble. I'll do that tonight or tomorrow because that's a great summary.
They say I talk too much.
No, man.
That was the short version.
Listen. What?
Yeah, exactly.
What is, but listen, Derek. What does Donald Trump do? People say he keeps saying the same things over and over. We know to look for all those little nuggets. But why do you think he keeps saying the same thing over and over again? That's just psychology 101. People need to hear things a number of times.
Did you hear one of his speeches recently? He said, one of his speeches recently, it was so funny. He said, they want me to keep talking. What the hell am I supposed to say? I don't know what to say. We're a nation in decline. He said, it's so funny because it's like, what else am I supposed to say? There's not. And that's, if you can hear it from him, ladies and gentlemen, he's saying it. And I know that the saying, y'all know this, but the KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. The man who originated that phrase, the stupid part didn't mean calling someone stupid. And really, it probably should have been the other way around. Keep it stupid, simple, in another form. But it's basically, though, ladies and gentlemen, that it goes back to like you don't need to know a lot of this stuff. Now, if you're capable of multitasking more, great. But if you're not, then keep it simple and know, okay, what is that dash? Surely someone knows what that dash is or whatever it is. And if you can't explain it to your buddies and your friends and family, then say, hey, I know a guy. He talks a lot, but anyway, but stuff like that,
Absolutely. There's a bunch of things I want to touch on that you mentioned. But real quick, I want to thank Vieira32940 for the Rumble rant, and I'd like to address her question since she did, of course, was kind enough to make a donation here. Dave, Mark, and Derek, is the wrinkled flag on the coffin truly used for treasonous types or military? I had a retired CIA guy tell me that was not true. Let me give you my answer first, and I want to hear what Derek is saying. Derek, you correct me for whatever I'm wrong here, because I have some personal experience in this, even though I didn't serve. As far as I understand it, I do not know of a regulation that dictates that a wrinkled flag indicates treason. However, as with everything else that we know in this world, in this operation, you can use logic and common sense to dictate what was happening. And of course, you're referring to the flags on the Bush coffin, McCain's coffin, RBG's coffin, etc. Okay, as Derek just told you, the military works off of laws, orders, and regulations, right? There's a reason we keep talking about military precision. There is likely no other organization in the world that operates with as much detailed precision and accuracy as the United States military. The protocol, when a military, a veteran, somebody passes away, and again, I went through this personally with my father, so I witnessed it firsthand, is you go to the funeral home, the funeral director orders a flag, there is a specific office you get it from, it gets distributed through United States Postal Office, it is picked up there, and then in the case like my father, he had an honor guard as well. The funeral director, prior to these ceremonies, takes the thing out, irons it, steams it to perfection. Okay? To perfection. The day my father passed away, his funeral, unfortunately, was in the pouring rain. And we had 3 honor guard there. Those honor guard, each time they took the flag off of the coffin, literally each time, because it was raining, there was somebody with a steamer in the back of the church, in the back of the funeral home, that ensured there was not a single wrinkle or fold in that flag, just as you would expect from the military. So those of us that are saying that the Bush funeral and all those that had the wrinkled flag indicates treason, not that there's a hard and fast rule, but if they're doing that for my father, who was just a lower level Navy officer, you think they're not doing that for a former president of the United States when you look at that disgusting wrinkled flag? So it may be, in my opinion, how you're, somebody, a CIA person you're talking to might be saying there's not an actual regulation that states that. But this is where you just got to use common sense. Why were every one of these people, McCain, H.W. Bush, RBG, I think there's a few others, have these disgusting wrinkled flags? Derek, anything you want to add to that?
Well, there's actually a website you can look at on the defense.gov that shows the do's and the don'ts. And of course, I mean, out of just straight up off, no, there's not like a regulation in a sense. There's been things that we've had in the military called customs and traditions that are just a known thing. Like the hands in your pocket. kind of deal. No walking and talking on your phone. I think they may have been a lot more lenient in the last few years now. They may have abolished that. I don't know. I don't talk to anybody anymore that's like a drill sergeant or anything like that, but or not even just drill. But when you're talking about the president of the United States of America, I mean, once again, we're not like, and I say that no disrespect to your dad either, because I'm the same way. When I die, I'm going to get just a regular rifle, because I didn't rank up to a certain rank to get cannons, things like that. But you get the same ceremony. So my dad, my grandpa, everybody, they're going to have the same thing. My uncle, everybody has them. But that flag in the military, that old saying, it just means more. Like they say that with the SEC football, it just means more. That saying, it just means more. Well, in the military, it's more of a camaraderie, brotherhood, sisterhood, but from the grand, like a bigger picture, right? We take that to the utmost nth because we are the ones that fight for humanity, liberation. The military don't care if you're gay, straight, atheist. They'll give you housing. If you're willing to fight for your country, they'll recognize whatever you are, right? And people struggle with that. But it'll paint the picture that military is bigger than yourself and individuals. So when you're talking about a president, right? And the flag, the one that had the dog in front of it, that's all over NBC, CNN, whatever they are. That's your visual right there. The dog was a distraction point in the first place for all the normal people in the first place, because they're looking at the dog. Oh, the dog, golden lab, service dog, yada yada. But that flag was so wrinkled, ladies and gentlemen. And if you just go to defense.gov, you can look at that and you can see it. I mean, we don't.
That's McCain's. That is McCain's funeral flag. Like, if you think for a minute that there is a single honor guard in the United States military that would ever allow that to go on a coffin, I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely not. And that's the same thing I do with Biden. I say, okay, if Biden was real and really president, then I, in a neutral seat, especially as a veteran, would have to say, okay, let me see the checklist of January the 20th. All right, by custom, it's the Air Force who flies the president-elect into D.C. on Air Force One. All right, well, that didn't happen. This didn't happen. This didn't happen. So like you do a checkpoint of customs. Because like the cannon salutes, that's a custom. It's a tradition. It's a custom. So like when you die, don't matter if you're black, gay, Buddhist, atheist, whatever you are, the military don't care. If you served your nation and you honorably retired or honorably discharged, every one of those people get a funeral service. And then you're honoring their life. And that's where your humanity and that's where your compassion, that's when you say, I don't care how they live their life, but you know what? They fought for this nation. You do everything you can to send them off the right way. You wouldn't have a wrinkled flag on a POW if he was really a POW worthy of being an honorably retired veteran like he was. So, you got to go, why would a guy who was a congressman for all these years, a POW, his flag look like what I get done with a Three Musketeers? It ain't there, right? So if you go to the U.S. Department of Defense, do's and don'ts, clean and damage-free flags should always be used. Dirty, ripped, wrinkled, or frayed flags should not be used. I mean, it can't get any more clear. And it says, And also when flags are damaged, they should be destroyed in an identified manner. So if you go to Title IV, ladies and gentlemen, Title IV of the U.S. Code, 4 United States Code is your flag code. That's why when President Trump says, you heard them all, the liberals, I gave them hell too. But all the liberals over there on the X were talking about, look at him saying he will send you to prison for a year for burning the flag. You might want to go look at Title IV. It is actually constitutional. It gives the president the authority and the right to determine what happens if you hurt or damage or fray the flag. So, that's the flag has its own title in there. But there's some things that are just known in the military that are a custom or a tradition. But now the cannons are all there. You can go to the regulations and see that on the cannon salutes. They show the number of cannons and all that, the four flourishes, etc. 3 flourishes. it shows the chart. But there's some things that are just kind of like saluting. That's another thing. There's a few things you can look up on a search engine and you'll find certain things, but it don't specifically say, yes, you have to salute the commander in chief. Yes, you have. It don't say that. That's always been up for grabs. That didn't start until Reagan, ironically. So, it's one of those things where you just have to know that. But I guarantee you, I was walking across Fort Sill one day, and it's funny. I love watching it because I always kept my head on a swivel in the military. That was me. I did everything by regulation, everything. So I was walking across base one day, and I saw them coming. It's a little Dodge Caravan, black Caravan. They got a little license plate holder in the front, and it swaps out. It's designed specifically where it can come in and out. If it's a general, colonel, whatever rank they are, they'll slide that thing in there, and it's got little flags on the front of it. It'll be flying. Well, you better keep your head on the swivel just in case the general or a colonel rides by you. Well, there were two privates walking. I'm going to assume they were privates, but they were walking, and all you heard were brakes locking, literally, and you could smell the smoke. You could see it. Like they'd locked the brakes. They did not salute that vehicle, and it wasn't the colonel who hopped out, because I happened to be close to that when it was a colonel. I was sitting there saluting. It wasn't the colonel who hopped out. It was a sergeant major in the back who hopped out. That back door flung open, that sliding door. He got out and he annihilated them. I mean, in their face, and it was words I can't say on here. It sounded like a Morse code, right? But basically, in between the beeps, you better keep your head on a swivel, and you better pay attention to detail, and you better salute when your commander is rolling around. So see that now people can say that's crazy and all this other stuff. Well, that's why you didn't serve, and that's okay. It ain't for everybody. But when you're in a civilian status and you don't want to listen to veterans who this is your everyday life in the military, and this is absolute do's and don'ts, then I mean, I don't know who can help you, but and I'm not knocking the CIA, dude. I mean, I know people who've been in the CIA that are good people. It ain't all of them, but at the same time, if someone's telling you that, they're either absolutely oblivious or they're absolutely controlled opposition. I mean,
you know what I think happens, Derek? I think things in this movement get lost in translation. That's why I wanted to present it this way, because I think what happens is people hear that. They might hear somebody presenting the information about the flag, and then they turn around to say it to somebody, and they're like, look, the rules say that they're and then it gets repeated. And the reality of the situation, I'm really glad we addressed that, because it's not a rule, but yeah, logic and common sense should dictate that would never happen.
Then you should, and then also any time that happens in society, we have to get back to a place where we can separate our feelings for somebody when they die and go, all right, if they're honorably retired, honorably discharged, no matter what they believe, now that they're not here anymore, if they are by definition of what a military funeral is supposed to be, that flag should be crisped no matter what their beliefs were. All right, no matter what. All right, and if you'll go read even right here, The Art of War, it talks about how, keeping your enemy like safe. A lot of the enemy out there, they've been brainwashed just like everybody else, ladies and gentlemen. A lot have been raised from a baby up to believe what they believe by someone over there telling them that America's a threat to them. It's not their fault necessarily. Now, the people do have a choice, yes, but we got to get back to a place where people. That's why I tell people all the time, if Biden was president, by military customs and traditions and laws and orders, I could say, okay, yep, I may not like it, and I don't like the word hate, but I could absolutely despise the man, but I could still go, yep, unfortunately, yep, unfortunately, yep, but there's none of that. It's the polar opposite. It's like, no, he got a funeral service, he got this, and Amazing Grace, which is Army Memorial. So it's like that. I wish people could feel that passion and flip it. Yes, I know people are suffering. Yes, I know, I know what's happening in the economy, but that's all part of the macro plan that you're going to see on the flip. Like if you could just see that, hey, you're going to live. If you live, like if you're 40 and you live to be 90, if you're 50, you live to be 90, whatever you are, you live to, if you just live 10 more years, you're going to see the full array and full disclosure of everything. And so that's why I'm telling people, if you die, you're going to die anyway. I'm not susceptible to death. We all got to die, right? So that mentality, though, saying that people are suffering and people are dying, well, you got to snap into reality, because if you get to live to be an old man or woman, man, this right here is exciting to get to go at the whole world. I told a friend of mine, I've been red pilling a guy in my neighborhood, and I said, man, the whole world, a whole world that had a TV witnessed Joe Biden have a funeral service. That was not an inauguration by military customs. The whole world witnessed it, right? It ain't like that. The only people who did witness it are the ones who didn't see it or don't have a TV, right? That's it. The ones who saw that on TV somehow tangibly, they are looking at a military funeral service, and it will be publicly somewhere resolved down the road soon.
And no offense
Absolutely.
to the woman's informant, but I think by this point in time, we've already learned essentially that CIA stands for can't inform anyone. So, I wouldn't put too much stock in anything.
That's right.
CIA agent has to say.
Yeah.
Derek, when you laid all that out, going back to the laws and orders, and I think it's important to reinforce a couple of things that you said there, and even connect them to the Q drops, because you start to see, as you study all this stuff, how much truth there is in those drops, right? We know that by now. And what you basically laid out, you talked about the 200 generals, right? I want to play a clip of Trump from, I believe it was about a week and a half ago. And this was one of the ones that Joe Rambo caught. He's all over this kind of stuff. He's a lot like Derek in terms of the way he dissects what Trump says. He gets to look for those little nuggets. Let's listen to Donald Trump, what he has to say about a particular general. Listen closely to this clip.
Chairman Jason Simmons, who's been a friend of ours for a long time. Where's Jason? Nice tall character right here. Thank you very much, Jason. And somebody that's been with me from day one, he's a real general. You know, we have the real generals and we have the fake woke generals that did so poorly in Afghanistan, should have all been fired. But this is a real general, Keith Kellogg. Right, Keith? And this is a great group. It's good to see you, Keith. He's been with me from before day one, right? He said, that guy should run. We got to get him to run. I like those guys. They were here before I ran. There's quite a few of them, too. We have the front.
Did you guys hear what he said there? He's been with me from day one. Actually, he's been with me from before day one. And he's talking about, he asked him, that guy should run. What does it say here in Q drop 14? One of the earliest drops, right? It talks about a whole bunch of different things, military intelligence and its relation. I'm not going to go through the whole drop, but down here at the bottom. So this is one of the things when we say it, this is not just some truther started saying this and we all repeat it. It's backed up here. Trump just told you, and it was also put in a Q drop that was written 7 years ago, right here. Was Trump asked to run for president with assurances made to prevent tampering? So Q is literally telling you that Donald Trump was asked to run by the military and that the military assured him they would prevent tampering. And so when you hear people say that the military stepped in some form in 2016 to make sure there was just enough interference with their interference for Trump to win, it's not just speculation. It's right there in the Q drops. And Trump just said it himself right there. And that connects directly to what Derek was just saying about all the different laws and orders and the 200 generals. He just said it to you It's amazing the way he does that. He just
Well, that's
kind
and
of
you can
sneaks
back
it in
that
there
up.
while people are.
Well, you can back that up on the National Guard.mil websites. I mean, it's already been put out there that the National Guard from 2018, 2020, and 2022 have been collecting data, the cybersecurity teams, right? So when I'm the one that said that about the 2016 and put that out there 2 years ago, is because I know full-fledged, and I knew it was going to take heat from it at the beginning, but that's fine. But the military didn't add votes to President Trump. He got votes based off of that. He prevented that. I said the military prevented Hillary, the Democratic National Convention, from adding votes then. Because in reality, they've been cheating for years. It's been that's the swamp. That's the Washington establishment. So there's no way anybody would have gotten in without somebody knowing how to jam that system. And that's what military is great at doing. Signal guys can jam systems, and just jam it. And that's why they deleted the video. I wish I wish somebody had that somewhere, like on a clip somewhere. But there was a video of Hillary. They showed her behind before, when she didn't go to the actual and concede like she was supposed to. When she didn't go to that pavilion where all those people, where your girlfriend was, Mark, out there screaming, right? Well, when she didn't go over there, right, there was a video of her that whomever got it, it got deleted quick, and it may have been one of those that ended up X'd off. I ain't making fun of that, but it may have been. But there was one where she balled her fist like Hitler, and she goes, "He knows everything," like that. And most people I know remember that. It was almost like someone. It wasn't a video like like a selfie stick that was stationary. It was someone holding it where you could see it moving. So it was someone. It'd be like a bystander or someone in her circle, or maybe a friend of a friend in that circle was filming that. That video got deleted, but she said and I'm pretty sure she said the mother knows everything. Was to say it. Well, that's what that and ladies and gentlemen, that's why they're bringing them back to the surface right now. Hillary is all over it. I shared a picture of her today from CBS. They have 2 different Hillarys on the page, and I'm like, well, old Bill, if he was real, he might actually like her now, and she might actually get to send her dress to the cleaners now, finally herself. But so all this stuff's coming back to surface, and I tell you what. I'm gonna give you a little nugget. I haven't got to do it because of the time I do with laws and orders and stuff, but I heard someone make a case that the Q drops are backwards. So like if you take the very first and then flip them, well, what little I studied and what little I spoke to someone I know that is, heavy Q. When they started studying it that way, they were like, "Oh my!" That was their comment. "Oh my gosh, it does." Well, now they're bringing Hillary back in the picture. They're bringing her. Let's say they're easing her in. They're easing her in, right? And so we know what happened when she was detained, right? Well, so I don't know. Like I'm thinking that's gonna. I think that's how they're gonna play it out. But all this stuff. That I don't know. It's just the Keith Kellogg thing. Keith Kellogg. He's the one who this is going to be bad. Some people don't like this, but if you read his War by Other Means book, he did not say 2 kind of words of someone that someone else put in the queue too. Now, see, I know people are going to struggle with that, but he didn't have kind words for a certain director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. The name you saw in that same post there on Q. Now, see, what a lot of people got to learn is what a psychological operation is. And once again, like the art of war, warfare is deception. You, ladies and gentlemen, are not in that warfare. You are, but you're not. You're not in the strategic operation of it. You're not the one running it in that command, in that field, in that clean out, in that. They're doing this for everybody. Right, even me as a veteran, I'm retired, but I'm not in that capacity. Right, so I can see it and know it, but I'm not in that capacity either. I'm not up here operating with them. even though I can see what nuggets they put out. But Keith Kellogg, that whole thing, when I put that video out, I was like, ladies and gentlemen, you got to know War by Other Means. Then you got to know that Keith Kellogg, this guy was the one who wrote that. Now they're trying to hide it. Boy, you can't Google it to save your life. You go over to Google. People say, can you stop saying Google? I had someone the other day, can you say stop using Google? I said, no, you want to use all the enemy. Let them know that you're looking it up.
Right.
Like, let them know that, let them see the algorithms changing, that people are looking that up. Hammer them with that. But there was an article put out about a new national security strategy that was written just in case. That's what they said, just in case President Trump were to get in. Well, it was written by Keith Kellogg, and I don't know how you say his last name, Fred Fleitz. I don't know how you say it, but that was also who came after Kellogg when President Trump was Fred. All right, well, Kellogg is the one who wrote the new national security strategy, and Fred is the editor on it. All right, so there was a tie-in with that, but then also the America First policy. All right, that goes back to the Indo-Pacific, I think 2018 publication, where President Trump had Pompeo. He said that he said specifically that every state needs to be an independent, and country needs to be an independent state on its own. America First, ladies and gentlemen, didn't mean America and the heck with everybody else. See, a lot of even liberals think that, and it's like, no, it's not that. So, and to prove all that, I think before I forget the point, I wanted to make sure everybody knew, it's like the state.gov, ladies and gentlemen. If you go to state.gov right now, I have the little compilation videos up that you can go look at where I'm screening it on my phone and I'm clicking. But the travel abroad by the president, the Secretary of State, the foreign leaders to the U.S. haven't been updated since December the 21st, 2020. On the national security strategy, ladies and gentlemen, defense.gov, Department of Defense, the last NSS that's published or archived is President Trump's December 2017. Biden has one in 2022. Why isn't it on defense.gov? All right, it should be there. If you go over to the National Security Council, it's called a U.S. Government Manual.gov. All right, that's the national security. If you go over there, hasn't been updated since February 2021, the other portion, March 2021. How long were the National Guard in D.C.? Up to March 2021, the National Guard that Donald John Trump put there. When you click on Mark Milley, it says Mark Milley, but you got to look. You're on a .gov site, but you got to look at what you're clicking on. It's a .mil. When you click on that, it says Mark Milley. When you click on it, it goes over to Charles Brown. So all these sites, ladies and gentlemen.
Derek, isn't that guy's happen to be Charles Q. Brown, by the way?
Q Brown. Just happens to be Q Brown.
Yeah.
It just happened yesterday, of all times, talking about Q again, of all time. Just yesterday, they showed Biden in Philly. It was like a 5 or 10 minute speech by the time you knock out all the petty jokes, which he's an actor anyway, but still, by the time you knock out all that, one number he mentioned in that whole speech, 17 billion. I mean, it's just like it's just dicing and slicing.
Well, this is the whole key that we've discussed for a while now, because as this now flow of mainstream information is coming out, it was just a trickle and a drip, and a trickle, and now it's become a flow. As more of this flow starts to come through, I think all of these main characters who are going to be the epicenter of taking down the swamp are going to be brought back into play. And they'll be the first ones that you see start.
And there you go with the epicenter. That's in a queue. And then the horse that won whatever race it was a couple of years was named Epicenter, right? So there's so much like I gotta tell people, if you think it's crazy, then man, I'm like Waylon Jennings. I've always been crazy, but it's kept me from going insane. Because I will champion the word crazy if that makes me crazy. Because there's so much stuff that literally we could talk, 18, 24 hours straight and still not be able to cover everything. That's like I tell people in my book. Some people say, why did you leave this out? You talk about this, but what? I said, if I put everything in a book that I talk about, it would look like Obamacare. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
no one would read it.
And
you know,
No one would be allowed to.
the comms are everywhere in the mainstream media at this point. I mean, just today you saw, I mean, look how many people Kamala Harris happened to have at her rally the other day. Of course, it's 17,000 people. And just today we had, there's actually SGN that pointed this out. Here's the paper of record, the New York Times. The New York Times on September 17th of all dates. Look at what it's talking about. The Secret Service's priority is to protect the continuity of government. There it is again. So, you know, they stick all those little nuggets in left and right. But Derek, I want to, you know, when you were doing your presentation a minute ago, there's something that popped in my head. I wanted to pull it up real quick and just kind of get your take on it, because I think people will find this interesting. We touched on this a while ago, but I think it's worth revisiting. So that Q drop that I just showed, which was speaking about Donald Trump being asked to run, in the beginning of it, it also talks about military intelligence and what needs to be done to invoke military intelligence over the other three other agencies. There are a plethora of drops that point to everything that Derek just laid out when it comes to continuity of government. There's, of course, this drop right here, drop 22 on November 1st, 2017, talks about who controls the National Guard. Normally, that's the governors. Why was the National Guard really recently activated in select cities within the U.S.? We've talked about that. Can the National Guard work in coordination with the Marines? Yes, but do conditions need to be satisfied? Yes, they would have to be federalized under some kind of act of war or insurrection. There's your answer. The key thing is, what former president used the military to save the republic, and what occurred exactly. Go back to what Derek Jonhson was just talking about with Lincoln, the suspension of habeas corpus. There's people that bring up posse comitatus that came out after that, but don't forget, we also have an insurrection act that would override all that. So all of this is connecting to a domestic insurrection. But Derek, you talk a lot about the justice phase. We've talked about tribunals and the disposition of all these different sealed indictments, right? I want to remind everybody, this is directly from July 1st, 2018. You've all seen this, the sealed indictments list. I just looked as of right now. By their tracking, these are the same people in this spreadsheet that update this, that are in the Q drops, 509,864. But there's an interesting piece of this that relates to what you were speaking about, Derek, and it's in drop. Let me just pull it up real quick because I changed it. It's in drop 1927, I believe. Just bear with me one sec. Yes, drop 1927. Here it is. So connect the dots here on everything that Derek is talking about. And in his documents.info and all his different, you've spoken about this a lot, spoken about the UCMJ, right? The Uniform Code of Military Justice. Well, and you talk about national emergencies, right? Absolutely. So right here in drop 1927, August 19, 2018, excuse me, define subversion, the act of subverting, the state of being subverted, especially a systematic attempt to overthrow or undermine a government or political system by persons working secretly from within. Did we have that happen? Yeah, absolutely. Derek just laid out the entire case for it. Then it's referring to presidential actions, executive order blocking the property and persons involved in serious human rights abuses, Executive Order 13818. And here's the quote from that. What does it say at the bottom? National emergency. Isn't that what Derek just talked about? But here's where it gets interesting. And you talk about the UCMJ a lot. January 1st, 2019, Section 12, in accordance with Article 33 of the UCMJ, as amended by Section 5204 of the MJA, the Secretary of Defense, in consultation with the Secretary of Homeland Security, will issue non-binding guidance regarding factors that commanders, convening authorities, staff judge advocates, and judge advocates, think tribunals, should take into account when exercising their duties with respect to the disposition of charges and specifications in the interest of justice and discipline under Article 30 and 34 of the UCMJ. That guidance will take into account, with appropriate consideration of military requirements, the principles contained in official guidance of the Attorney General to attorneys for the federal government with respect to the disposition of federal criminal cases, in accordance with the principle of fair and even-handed administration. Derek, the way I read that, that is essentially saying we've updated the UCMJ for what is about to happen, and the key word is the last sentence, with respect to the disposition of federal criminal cases. Well, are these federal criminal cases? The sealed indictments? Yeah, they are. So right in the Q drops, it's talking about the UCMJ and how the UCMJ and the military judge advocates, staff judge advocates will dispose of the federal indictments. Is that how you read that?
Well, yeah, and that's what happened on December the 20th, 2019. When I talk about the 6 things that took place, so the Space Force was established. You had the Global Fragility Act that was passed. Then you had, obviously, Stephen B-Gun, however he says his name, who was the Deputy Secretary of State, who was sworn in, basically, if you will, on December 21st, next day, 2019. So that's your last person that's like on that state.gov we're talking about. So there's that guy. And then you had the 2 things I always talk about, which obviously the golden nugget would have been the Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That's the one that set all this up. But yeah, the Uniform Code of Military Justice was established in 1950, even though we had a law war before that, or military law, but 1950. It has never, get this, never been overhauled since 1950. Overhaul means all these new laws, all these new changes, all these new sayings, which meant not always include it. You can separate it because they come with 2 different, codifications or booklets or manuals, whatever you call it, websites nowadays. But Uniform Code of Military Justice is Title 10, which you'll find on the House.gov. But then you have the Courts Martial Handbook that had to be reissued for the Judge Advocate Generals. So that took place all on December the 20th, 2019. So do your math. It's just would be 12 days before that, right? No, I take that back. That's flip side. So that they did that in December. So that was 12 months before right there, what that is. So when you go look, when you read that, I'm doing my math wrong. I'm acting like I'm from Mississippi now. But January 1st, 2019, the December. So, but when you look at that, and the jurisdiction of where our courts are, that is saying what was coming. Now, that's what made me stumble on all of everything that I stumbled on when I started digging, was when I started looking at Obama's courts martial executive orders where he changed the courts martial process. That's what made me stumble on all of these things throughout 2016, 2017. And then as President Trump and the Congress did these things in the military, these very things are what made me stumble on that. So I was going to read something too that will pair with that if I pulled it up right here. And it's on page 92 of that link that I put in the private chat. If you wanted to click on that joint, that's the joint publication that I was talking about, the joint planning. And it actually has on the next page, it has the mobilizations of the National Guard, who could do it, what could do that. But I've got mine pulled up here, but
I could pull it up for you. Said page 92.
page 90 on the PDF part, not the actual. They show two different pages. So since it's a PDF, it's the page 92 of the PDF. And it'll say on part C, let's see, scroll back a little bit before that.
This is B
Let
right
me see
here.
if that's it. Let me see if that's the right one. Well, basically it says, so it'll say, if you want to do the control F, but a national emergency can be declared by the president, Congress, or both. Current law regarding national emergencies is contained in the National Emergencies Act of 1976. The act provides that when the president declares a national emergency, the specific authorities must be included in the declaration or by one or more contemporaneous or subsequent executive orders. Presidential powers are limited to those authorities invoked until the president subsequently announces the invocation of additional specified authorities. Congress may terminate the president's declaration at any time with a concurrent resolution and must review the declaration and situation every 6 months. So that one line right there, that one line, there's that Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That 1550 was at December the 20th, 2019. It says every 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter, right? So that's setting that tone of all that. So there's your command right there. And then it says the president, it said regular and irregular forces. That irregular term, ladies and gentlemen, that's your unconventional warfare. That's your clandestine operations. That's your guerrilla warfare. That's all the different kinds of warfare. That irregular component is what I was talking about earlier, where the Army has an actual link that has all of the different kinds of warfares, what the links are. That's what that one word entails. So then you break that down. That's your special operations. That's why you go, man, that Derek guy, he's talking about the assassinations are all set up and planned. Well, they were things that happened in the past, but they're a replay for the past to present the present. All right. So if you want to know what really happened, then this is it. But if you're someone who cannot ever get in that mindset, then you may just have to live in the present and think of it as a present. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because it is part of warfare, unfortunately. And because we are in a society where it has to be drip, drip, drip. I mean, you know, I wish it was more. I mean, my dad and I talk about that all the time. We talk about, man, I wish it was more where, you know, you didn't have to wait 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever it is. But that right there, getting into the Judge Advocate General, when President Trump changed that courts martialing, when you go read the Military Justice Act, which that's why I joke with liberals. I say, y'all want to call it Trump Supreme Court, Obama Supreme Court. Well, if you want to do that, you really shouldn't do that. But if you want to do that, go back to Obama Supreme Court. They're the ones that clarified in the Military Justice Act of 2016 that military courts and federal are separate, which means the laws are separate, they're separate. And they specified the courts martial process in there again, which that was way back here in May 2016. And that didn't get passed until the 2017 Defense Authorization Act. So if you actually go read the report, it says August 2020, even though it was written way back here in 2016. So then apply that number. August 2020 was after those two numbers right there. But when you read what President Trump put back into place, it is, I mean, it gives you chills in another manner, but this is saying it, like I told a buddy the other day, if they got dirt on you, your ass is grass, is saying this, because it put the authority back into the hands of the general of the. There could be no rebuttal from. Ironically, that's crazy to think about, that someone on the lower rank could have rebutted a case or a decision. But if you go back and read all the other courts martial process that Obama and all that had in here, and then go look at the difference of what President Trump either way, if you want to call it reinstated or whatever term you want to use, but put back into law, it puts it in the sole decision of that general of whatever case it is. And I find it interesting too that one of our jurisdictions, one of those jurisdictions is in St. Croix, and where they shown Joe Biden vacationing every December, St. Croix, right? And I've already shown people people say, well, it was cold when they left in D.C., so they were probably still wearing. I'm like, no. You own an aircraft like that, and you're the president. If you're the president, you're on an aircraft like that, you can change by the time you get to St. Croix. You ain't going to walk out of St. Croix with a scarf on and a full weather jacket. You ain't going to do that. That's like Texas in August. You're not going to do that. No. So that's what they showed everybody, that Biden and St. Croix in 2022 and 2023, right, Christmas vacation, right? I mean, I guess if it's Chevy Chase vacation, okay, maybe that'll work. But, you know, they put it right in front of everybody. So there's a jurisdiction there. And then there's, you know, so, you know, but that, yeah, in the National Guard, if you go to page 93 of that joint publication, it shows the authority, it shows the actual chart for the executive order. Well, it wouldn't be not the executive order, but it shows the Title 10 that went with it.
Real quick, here it is.
There it is, right
Biden
there.
arrives in U.S. Virgin Islands. There's the cap.
Look at the scarf.
And you know that.
Look at that.
Come on.
I mean,
Come on,
if anybody's dressed more for it, he is, right? But all the others are like, no, you know, like they're like, oh, the Polar Express. You know, it's insane.
Again, in case anybody thinks, here's the caption, here's the article. There it is. Biden arrives, and I got
the
image.
At the time, live time, I went over to Google and because I have it time stamped like I do on my screenshots. I went over to Google as fast as I could, and I'm like, what's the weather? And it was like 85 degrees, you know, 75, 85, and it said humid. You know, it tells you, you know, I'm like, you're not going to walk out like that. You're not. You own an Air Force One.
I mean,
they tell you Air Force One has. They tell you Air Force One is 4,000 square feet, ladies and gentlemen. That is like a beach condo.
Maybe they flew with the windows open.
Absolutely. That's why they have no cognitive skills.
Or maybe Jill just had COVID for the 17th time and she was cold. You know, that's possible too.
Exactly. Yeah.
But,
exactly.
You know, Derek, you mentioned in the last few minutes we have here, we should touch on this because you said something that's a perfect transition, right? You talked about irregular forces, right? Psychological operations, the secret army, the operators, all that stuff that we've covered. And that is exactly how we're seeing all of these different events take place. You talked about a controlled presentation, and anybody that's watching tonight that hasn't seen it, that's interested in a little bit of a deeper dive on the second assassination attempt. I did a show on this on Sunday. It's in the Rumble link below. I was also on with Joe Rambo this afternoon. Please check out his channel. We talked about it. So we're not going to do a huge deep dive, but I want to get Derek's take on it because Derek is one of the people, like Mark and I, that were very forthcoming and still are about the first assassination attempt and how, and we're not going to go back into that one, but how it was very obvious to all of us that was a product of White Hat Productions. It was a controlled presentation of real threats. And, you know, Derek, what I said the other day that I think this is kind of where I want to get your take. You know as well as anybody how many threats there have been on Donald Trump's, I shouldn't mean threats, attempts there have been on Donald Trump's life, right? Dozens. It really depends on who you ask. Dozens, though. You know, right away you should say to yourself, why is it that all of a sudden since Butler, there was Butler, then there was North Carolina where they arrested a crazy gunman that wanted to take out Trump, and then Phoenix, the same thing, and of course now what we saw in West Palm the other day. You know, logical common sense should have people asking why all of a sudden this is being broadcast to the world as if every good old boy down in Florida wants to get a gun and go take out Trump. All of a sudden now, and that plays right into what we talked about a month ago, man, or 2 months ago when this happened with the controlled presentation. So to me, it was very obvious. The narratives get more crazy as the days go on, I just walked out today and somebody had the TV on and we saw, oh yeah, of course that gunman, he was lying around for 12 hours, right? 12 hours he was in the bushes. I said this to Rambo today, and I'm not encouraging anybody to do this. I don't recommend it, but go ahead. Go get a fake gun. Don't even take a real one. Get a fake gun and go try to lay outside of one of Donald Trump's clubs for 12 hours while he's there. Let me know how that goes for you. The narrative is just, it's absurd. But before I get your take on that, I just want to point out one other thing that I noticed today, because Derek talked a lot about today being Constitution Day. We know that the sheriffs are our only true constitutional law. And there's a pattern I see emerging, Derek, with all these different events, is the more and more I see around Donald Trump and different things happening, you'll notice more and more sheriffs surrounding him and not the local police. So we got this video, supposedly this guy not only managed to elude the Secret Service for 12 hours, not only managed to get a gun through a fence, and there isn't really a fence, it's actually a wall, but that's a whole another point for another day. But let's look at who arrested him. I don't even need to put the sound on. There ain't a cop. There is no corporate municipal police officer within a mile of here. These are all sheriffs making the arrest. And that should kind of tell you a lot about who's on what side of all this stuff and who's really executing a lot of the stuff going on behind the scenes. But just a small nugget. Derek, bring some levity to this situation. What's your take on all this?
Well, I mean, for anybody to think that a president wouldn't have an attempt on their life, whoever they are, is absurd, right? We live in a society of ignorance everywhere. We know that. I'm the kind that I grew up with a family where if the old Alabama song, a man's good word and a handshake, you're all you need. That's the kind of wholesome life. No matter what people live behind their clothes. I was in Dollar General yesterday. All right. There's a Southern store right there. I was in Dollar General. There was a little older lady in front of me. I was with my buddy, my black buddy. I have to specify this for a reason. We were in the store. We were working on something for my dad. We were in the store and we were in there. His brother is a veteran. He works there. And so there's a little older lady. She had her little head, like a little top hat looking thing on, and had her little purse like driving Miss Daisy. And she said, I'll be 80 on my next birthday. She's just talking, little black lady. She's just talking about, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm so slow. I keep all my money in an envelope. The way I do it. It's the way I operate. So it's like that, right? And she was just living life, right? Little lady living her life. And then I don't know what made her say it, but she said, I was taught to mind my own business, though. I was taught to mind my own business. And my mama said, if it ain't for anybody, if someone said don't tell nobody, you don't tell nobody. It was like, so it's one of those things. And we were all like amening and hallelujah, right? Well, that's the world that we need to live in. That's the wholesome world. That's the world that everybody wants. And it's just like another guy I was talking to yesterday, a guy in my town here. He was like, everybody wants a house to sleep in, roof over their head, food on their table. That's what we all have in common, for sure. Right? So, it's like everybody's going to have a difference of opinion. But like, once again, President Trump, in the position he's in order to be able to do what he did, if you're truly somebody out there who can't stand the way America's gotten, especially depending on how old you are, but if like I hear my mother talk about the 50s and the 60s being, a good time to live, even though they didn't realize all what was going on behind the scenes back here, but still, like the overall life, the simple way before the internet, the phones, you had the party lines. I used to sing the Hank Williams song all the time and never knew what it meant. The woman on the party line's a nosy thing. She picks up my receiver, and when she knows it's my ring, why don't you mind your own business? That kind of life, right? Well, now we're in that world where before President Trump ran, if you don't even know anything about the operation, before he ran, 98% of people loved him. Just because he put his hat in the race, people hate him. For what? Right? And that's why I call it a Build-A-Bear, grab-and-go society, that a lot of these people, they're too busy worried about their hoo-haws down here and all this other stuff, creating safe spaces while they're sitting there really promoting the swamp and don't even realize it. They're too busy worried about, monkeypox that only affects one little group of people. And if that group of people would stop doing that nasty stuff they're doing, we wouldn't have to worry about that. So it's like little common sense stuff, right? So you put humor with it. But then when you go, okay, there's no way that Donald John Trump, an outsider, a businessman, in one of his interviews years ago in the 80s, he said, rich people don't like me because I compete against them and I like to win. He was like, I like to hang around the people. He was like, down on the street level, this level, because they love me. I create opportunities for them, basically. Right. So all this stuff that they teach you about the taxing the rich and all this other stuff, you can't tax the rich. You can't tax the rich so much that you can make the poor come out of poverty. There's no such thing. I mean, it goes back to all these other things you talk about. So when you get down to the nut, what you call it, the brass knuckles, as my dad calls it, let's get where the rubber meets the road. There's no way Donald Trump walked in this massive establishment. You got to realize, once again, that establishment was not just some congressman or woman you don't like or they don't talk with certain. He went up against a world global swamp. That required a massive military behind him and a massive bunch of world leaders, but also the secret military that it did talk about in Newsweek in March 2017. There's a lot of people. That secret military will never tell you who they are. It could be me. It could be anybody. You ain't going to know that. All right. But there's a massive group of people that are in those operations, right, that know. But they know because they've been tested. They've been tested right here and also by their actions, as we know. So there's no way that you can't. What people are struggling with is a military occupation is a military operation. It's martial law. That is what that entails. All right. But it don't mean it don't come with other stuff. We're still walking. We're still talking. I have to eat. When I get off here, I'm going to eat. I got to have a belly full, right? President Trump has to eat. He has to pee. He has to poop. He has to sleep. He's just like everybody else. So it's not like he's not because of whatever. Because he's this. Yes, there's been multiple attempts. But you got to listen to the man and know what the dash means. That dash is the operation. That dash is the occupation. And like I said earlier, it's going to come with turbulence and some bumps in the road. There's some stuff, but it still has a strategic plan. And you don't deviate from the plan. But like me, when I talk about Mar-a-Lago and Trump International and Trump Doral, I talk about this with my family a lot. I don't want to ever come across as, I've been, because it's not about that. But when things like this happen, right, if you get the opportunity to go there, one, it's because you're invited by a member, all right, of these clubs. Well, then you have to, it's about a week before, you have to go through, they get your name, social security number, everything. They do a background check on you. That's just to go through the gate. All right. When you go through the gate at any of it, there are Secret Service everywhere. So that debunks already the articles that were put out that there's limited Secret Service around President Trump. That's bullcrap. They are everywhere. And once again, I don't want you to do it. But if you want to do that, if you want to drive by one of his premises, I'll show you how to drive by there without looking suspicious, but also know what to look for. And you can see perch. It looks like deer stands. I call it the Secret Service deer stand. They got all those little things that are on the trailer. They got them everywhere. All right, there's Secret Service vehicles everywhere.
I can attest to that. You can't even get.
That's not a former president.
Right.
That's not a former president's setup at all, ladies and gentlemen, whatsoever. And then when people say he's paying for that, no, not Secret Service. He's not paying for that. And even sheriffs, that's not how that operation functions. That's not how that works. It would be a bunch of former military dudes that are in the capacity of, protection and things like that. If it was some extra, that right there, that is not him paying for that. That is presidential right there. So when you go to Mar-a-Lago, it's a little different because it's right on the corner. The ocean's right across the street, and but of course, when I go now, they know me, the Secret Service. The last time I was there, the guy goes, "Dude, you don't have to show me your ID. We know who you are." Like, it was so funny, and I'm still sitting there smiling like a little possum, have my ID, like here I am. And the guy's like, "Dude, we know who you are. It's all good. He's good to go. Let him in." Well, I'm not a member though, still, but at Trump International, where this supposedly happened, quote unquote, like you said, there's a wall. It's not a fence there. It's a wall. Now, you can't see it in the pictures, ladies and gentlemen, because it's got grass around it, but they do that on purpose. It's not a fence because President Trump, let's just, if we want to play devil's advocate and entertain a liberal for a moment, okay, this is how you do it. All right, if you think President Trump is egotistical and he's cocky and he's lavish and all these things, let me tell you what Donald Trump wouldn't do. He wouldn't have this big ass iron gate and then a chain link fence beside it, right? The iron gate has a massive wall right there in front of it. Plus, it's a 24-hour, even though it's just a golf course. See, what people don't know about Trump International Palm Beach golf course, it's just a golf course. It's not a resort. You don't stay there. It's just you go in there, you play golf, or either you wine and you dine and you get out. All right, it's not a stay resort. That's his golf course, right? You can, yes, the ladies go there and they have their little brunch and things like that. But other than that, it's a golf course. It ain't a resort. All right. So you got to check at the front. That wall goes all the way around that premise. There's not a fence there. All right. Donald Trump, if you're going to entertain the other side just briefly, all right, let's go with he's egotistical and he's lavish and all these other things. Man's got walls everywhere. All right. It ain't going to be big old gate, wall, and then chain link fence attached to it and go, ooh, let me peep in there. So when I heard that the driver fled off, I'm like, first off, you can't see the golf course from the road. All right. And then when they said, well, he peeped a rifle or whatever, a gun through an AK-47 through the fence, I'm like, don't have a fence. All right. So there's that. Then MJ Truth, I'll give shout out where it's due, but you get on and look at Twitter, X, whatever, way back to May 2022, there's this same dude on a Ukrainian theatrical video. All right. The dude he's been in this theatrical video for Ukraine. All right. And it's brief, man. It goes by quick. It's just a real quick video where his part is. All the other is slow. But then when they show him May 2022 now for Ukraine, well, then you got to know the history of Ukraine and tie that all in and what they're exposing of that. Ukraine's not a part of NATO, ladies and gentlemen. So the other night in the debate, listen to what they made Kamala say. It's so freaking brilliant what they made her say. All right, if you think she's real, she's not. But if you think she's real, then listen to what they made her say. They made her say that you, Donald Trump, need to tell the 800,000 Polish Americans who are living right here in Pennsylvania that you, blah, 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 all this other stuff. All right, my first thought, I'm like, okay, why are you saying Polish? All right, so because Ukraine, 85% of Ukraine speaks Russian. All right, but anyway, whatever. There's that. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, first off, you can't even get the language down and the right people. All right, Ukrainians. All right, so then she says, this man is trying to pull out. You're trying to say you'll leave these people behind of a country that's not even a part of NATO. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear Joe Biden talk about Article 5, Article 5, Article 5. He'll say Article 5 says that one attack on a NATO country is an attack on all. Ukraine is not a part of NATO. For the umpteenth time, they're not a part of NATO. Then Kamala, quote unquote again, was saying about, let's see, she said that, NATO, what else was it she said? She said something else that was brilliant. Brilliant from the standpoint of the flip. It exposes, I gave Zelensky military intelligence. Here's a nation who is not a part of NATO. But even then, you ain't going to be given no military intelligence. So they're exposing these people. And I got a buddy who watches a lot, and he loves, this show and loves me and whatnot. I go see him all the time in California, but he's a financial expert in the first place. But we were talking about that, how not long ago when Mike Jonhson was down at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump, and President Trump was talking about loans. Well, see, the money exchange, they're still tracking all the money, like it's tracking to the nth degree, right? And it's like there's a saying that the pig gets the fat and the fat gets the bacon, or whatever it is. There's a saying out there. Well, that's what at any one time, President Trump could have stopped this. They could walk right in like President Trump says. He says, I can stop Ukraine, Russia in less than 24 hours. All the stuff you're watching could be stopped just like that. But what they're doing is going to the nth degree, all the way down every rabbit hole of the real rabbit holes, not the rabbit holes that you might think of and know of, but we're talking about the military. They've gone to the nth degree on everything and making sure, because when they do go into a courts martial or a federal court, they're going to have everything. There won't be any kind of little peephole there to go, oh, you missed a spot here. You won't have Bill Clinton going, well, can you define what that is? By the definition, that's not what I thought of, was it? I mean, I went back and watched that interview. He sits there and admits to it, but then he turns around and says the definition. And the guy was a con artist. He was great. That's why they call him Slit Willie, because he was great in that system of which, you don't have the evidence, though. You don't have the tangible evidence, right? You can't present the actual DNA proof, right? But it's just speculation, right? That's that old school language. No, this time around, they're going to have everything. So it's just going to be like that. So that whole debate the other night ties in with that, and it loops back around, and it's just all been, once again, it's brilliant, because it's not just our military. It's not just our people doing it, the secret military. I mean, we're talking about the world is a part of this, the capitulations, everything, the world leaders. And it's important to listen to President Trump when he said it's not all of the DOJ. It's not all of the CIA. It's not all of the FBI. He said it's the senior level leadership, which we know they've all been, it's all been taken care of. But it's still for people to realize that there's good people in China. When Kamala's talking about Xi, this guy thanked Xi. Why wouldn't you? Like, there's certain people, ladies and gentlemen, that are good in every nation, and everybody's on that work. But that was all public exposure on that. The Ukraine thing and this assassin, it brings everything to the light. You just got to know where to look once again. And, there's a bunch of us out there that are all working on different segments. It's so much rapid fire that's just you can't hardly keep up with it all. But it's all disclosure. And so they made her, hang herself, hang everything to the normal people out there that thinks it's all real, because whenever the evidence does come out, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to be able to say, well, you said it back here. This is what you said. You said right. You gave Zelensky military intelligence. But if you want to be on the side of us that knows what's going on, then you can go to state.gov and go, well, the president hasn't traveled abroad, hasn't been archived since 2020. The Secretary of State hasn't been archived since 2020. The foreign leaders haven't been archived since 2020. What makes you think that the vice president's flying around all over the world like she says she has? She hasn't. So that it depends on what side of the aisle you want to sit on and, partake of.
Let's go back to the assassin again and everything that you just revealed about it. And let me play journalist for a second, which none of us are really used to.
Yes.
Now, you just said everything that you had to say regarding Trump International Golf Course, how it's secured, the wall around it, and everything else. All that considered, and everything that we've seen on the MSM. And Dave, you're in the area. Approximately how many news vans would you say were out there? How many crews are out there watching the investigation go on?
Currently?
Currently. since this happened?
I couldn't even tell you.
Would you say basically every local
Yeah,
and network
I mean,
station's been out there? Journalists, correct? Alleged journalists. There's a metal fence, a chain link fence, and a wall. Correct, Eric?
That's correct. That's what, you know, they say it's a chain link fence, and I've seen a wall. So,
And yet none of these reporters, none of these seekers of truth and deliverers of truth, even from where they're barred from across the roadway, can't see this and report it to the general public.
no, because it's all what's in. It's all, and that's the thing that we're showing people is that is it goes back to like Afghanistan. It goes back to all the other stuff, the crisis on the border. They show Ukraine. They show the same two or three clips.
right.
9/11.
2 or 3 clips. You know, and that's you know,
That's exactly right.
but I mean, I'm in the understanding that it's you know, it's all part of it, but it's to bring people ready for the JFK file reveal, and then also the past presents the present, not just to get JFK, but also what President Trump would have gone through. And this is the only way to get people on both sides of the aisle. I mean, Dave, you've seen them probably on X. I mean, look at all the comments. Like, what I saw one, and we're talking about big blue checks too. That's why I talk about blue checks all the time. I'm like, I ain't talking about like little people. We're talking about like some that are getting 200, 300,000 hits and 20 and 40 and 50,000 likes. How many times? One of them said, "How many times is this MFer going to stage his death?" I mean, we're talking about some sick people out there. Like to get to them to say, "Okay, do you support the military? Like, do you support the Constitution?" You say you do, right? So you say you do. So, what if I show you that there's a military occupation in place, military operation that's for humanity? These people wouldn't listen. So see, so what do you get? What does it take to make them go for humanity's sake? Right. So that's the stuff. A lot of this, you know, some of them is going to just be lost, no doubt, until they show stuff with children and all kinds of stuff like that. But for the ones that are the turntable people, average everyday Americans who are kind of complacent, not in a bad way, I don't mean it in a bad way, but just kind of complacent, lazy, sleepy, whatever, sluggish, then this is setting a precedent of, hey, when you see everything America at its worst in every capacity, then you can know where to take action, how to take action, how to be involved, also how to use your voice, and also how to use, you know, whatever your strength and skills are to get involved where you are. All right. So it's a full public disclosure in another manner to show what I mean, he's not the first. Reagan got shot at. Gerald Ford. Look at the governor of Alabama. Now, he was out there, yeah, you know, for the South, and especially what was going on during segregation and all that. And he was still hanging to the past, whatever you want to call it out there, whatever. But still, it doesn't matter. Governor Wallace, George Wallace, was shot, and it actually what put him in a wheelchair. So you know, this has happened throughout history. It's not like they're susceptible that they, oh, you can't, you know, they're not going to get shot at. Period. And there's also things that can be a part of operation, and then everyday life, there could be some idiot out there that does, you know, like way over somewhere that tries to take a pop or whatever. Like there's certain parameters that you can't cover. You can to a level, depending on if it's strategic, operation security, whatever it is. But if like President Trump's, you know, traveling somewhere or whatever it may be, and I mean, you never know. There could be someone that tries to shoot a vehicle, and it does happen. It's not like it doesn't. That's why they are bulletproof vehicles on top of it. So when you saw Elon Musk was joking about, should I make President Trump a bulletproof golf cart? Man, the liberals went nuts. But, you know, but that's showing you that this is not that serious. It's showing you that. There's ways, once again, it's like a quarter or a coin. It's got a heads and tails. Depends on what side aisle you want to be on. You want to be positive, optimistic, know what's going on, or negative, pessimistic, chicken little, the world's falling on you. It just depends on which one you want it to be. But, when you see President Trump laughing and cutting up and he just sitting there, like chilling, that tells you right there it's not that serious. Once again, I have to be careful when I say it, but President Trump says two things. He's got the stuff he has to say to the normal, sluggish, laggards, sleepy, normal, everyday, who don't read the laws, don't read the orders, don't know anything about military. Then he's got the very few over here that are going, hey, you want to know what's really going on? Here you go. And then we're not Hansel and Gretel in you either. We're giving you full doses daily. All right. But in order to get that full dose, you got to know the core components. So the language, the verbiage, the definitions, the terminology, and all that. And it is a lot of information. There ain't no doubt. But once you see it, you'll feel like, I tell people, I wish I could upload my spirit and passion, but also the feeling you get once it clicks, because it's like once it clicks, it's like you will have that true light. It's a light bulb, and it's a peace, It's a calmness, it's a passion, it's a fire, it's hard to describe it. And you don't have to be a veteran to feel that, not whatsoever. We have militias and things in our nation that were a lot more sometimes important than even the active duty veterans. The mentality that our founders had.
Absolutely. And, I echo everything you just said, especially about the light bulb. Some of us, it does take a while to grasp what's going on and the gravity of it and quite frankly, the insanity of what we're really looking at. But anybody that's come across to this side and has spent the time listening to people like Derek and many of the others out there that have been in this lane of this continuity of government, this, movie, although there are many real things going on, but Hugh talks about it a dozen times about a movie. And the better way to put it is this controlled presentation of events. Once you get your head around that, I can tell you right now, I don't know anybody that's ever gone back. I don't know a single person in these communities on X, on Telegram, and that looked at this stuff, digested it, accepted the fact that we are watching this very real operation, this controlled presentation, that has gripped that and accepted it, and then reverted back to no, it's not happening. Once you see it, you see it. There's simply no.
You can't unsee what you see. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unread what you read. Because it's there, and it's like you can't. It's kind of like the Bible says. The Bible says it's better not to know than to know and to deny. So it's like, now I'm not here to preach either, but, and I tell people all the time, like the Bible has a verse for everything. It really does when you read it. But when you don't read it, it's easy to say, it don't say that. Yeah, it does. Like the liberals, they say, that's the other thing Kamala did. They say, Kamala said, democracy. Then one time she said, your former general said you're a threat to the republic. So now we're a republic. Then she went back to the democracy later. Like you can't, like I'm like, but the Article 4, Section 4, you don't even have to go far into the Constitution. Article 4, Section 4, Republican form of government. Every state to be a Republican form of government. It's real simple, And then when you know what a democracy is, they exemplify that, because a democracy, ladies and gentlemen, would be like if you and I were all in a town, and I went to Dave's town, and Mark and I are there, and then I did something. And Mark's the witness, and Dave says, well, it's my town. You ain't doing this in my town, and you ain't leaving my town because I got some boys and girls that ain't going to like you. And then all of a sudden, I have no representation because Dave says, well, my town says this, and my town does this, and my town's going to do this to you. That's what a democracy is. In a constitutional republic, it says, well, I'll just leave your town and then I won't come back, whatever, that you have more freedom in a constitutional republic than you do in a democracy. Because if they deem that and they take you, you're done. right? If they were the kind that did like Texas did all the way up to the 1930s, they hang you for stealing a horse and made the town watch it. So like if you stole a horse, but you were like, whoa, I didn't know that it was out on the prairie roaming free, and I didn't see, it's this person owns 50,000 acres. I didn't see the fences. I wasn't near the fences. Well, you have no argument. You have no case because it's their word on yours. And that's what the true democracy is. And that's why if once you learn that aspect, and once you learn that, once again, the verbiage, everything Kamala said the other evening was the polar opposite of what a true Democrat liberal would be saying, should be saying, especially that it's public disclosure for the whole world to see. It's like once you go look at the laws and orders and all the other stuff behind the scene that's invoked currently in place, is not what they wanted to be saying. Any of that stuff she was saying. So brilliant stuff. It's a brilliant. I don't even know any of the words for it. Really, it's like I think it's God divine. No. It's just we're turning the page in the world.
Absolutely, man. And it's getting. I know people are probably sick of hearing me say this, but it's true. All of us that see it, we all look at each other and we say the same thing every week. Every week we're like, it's just getting more and more obvious. I don't think there should be a person in this chat that doesn't wake up every week or every day even and say, yeah, you know what? Things might not be where I want it to be in my life. I could say the same thing, absolutely, personally. But when it comes to the stuff we're talking about here, might not be in our time frame, but I could tell you right now, I wake up every day or virtually at this point, and I look at my phone and I say, here we go again. It just becomes more and more obvious every day, every week. And that's what you got to hang your hat on right now. You guys, everybody here, I talk to a lot of people individually in my, well, not a lot, but people in my circle, my friends and family. And I say, we're not wrong. We're not wrong. And all of you should be able to look in the mirror and say that to yourself. You're not wrong. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I know it sucks. People think you're crazy, your family. Okay. Yeah, that's not going to be forever. But I'll tell you one thing, there shouldn't be a person in these audiences that doesn't wake up and look in the mirror and say, there's parts of this, like Derek says, embrace the suck, right? Okay, it's not the greatest thing in the world to go through, but you can hang your head on one thing. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And it really is a beautiful thing to watch unfold and to watch more and more people come into this. And Derek, man, I want to thank you again for, being such a great friend of the channel and being so generous with your time. I can tell you had upwards of 5,000 people on all the platforms tonight, and the chat is just on fire. And, I know you know this, but it's worth repeating. The people are so appreciative that you have stepped into this role, and you execute it so well, man. You stay in your lane. You're consistent with what you do. And, you're bringing people the receipts, and, it's we're all incredibly appreciative to have you here, man.
Well, I appreciate that. It's an honor. I tear up every now and then I hear stuff like that. The other thing I think about is my mom and dad. A lot of people are sacrificing their time too for me to, I tell people I'm just serving beyond my service, and but I do appreciate all the comments, and I know I get on the roll sometimes, and then I say some things, but it's like every now and then you got to kick a little. I'm good buddies with the group, the group Little Texas. They had a hit song with that. You got to kick a little sometimes, but I do appreciate it, and it's that's like I tell people. Someone said, "Why you?" I said, "Well, somebody's got to do it." I mean, and so that's why I tell everybody: if someone's making you feel whatever it may be, you just say if they say that to you, say, "Why you?" Say, "Well, somebody's got to do it." So somebody's got to pick that torch and take it. And if I can preach just a little, I'll just tell a quick story about. Like I got a cousin that's a preacher, and he and his wife remind me all the time about the 4-letter words I say that ain't welcome in church sometimes. But But he was telling a story one time that, you know, it was a war story that someone he had heard, and he said this: the enemy had surrounded this encampment, and the lieutenant and the commander, the captain, they were, oh man, we're not going to make it. It was negative. They were short on ammo, things of that nature. And then he said there was this one private who was just dumb at the world, just, you know, didn't carefree, careless, didn't care. He was a private. I'm in the military, whatever. And he said that he ran down. So the captain climbs up in the tree. This is Vietnam. Captain climbs up in the tree trying to look for something. And the young buck private, he goes and he wanders off and he finds this ammo, comes running back with all this ammo. And he was like, I found a compound of ammo. He's like, we got them right where we want them, baby. Well, that captain the whole time who was supposed to have that attitude was looking down at that buck private going, yeah, we do got them right where we want them. But he should have been saying that the whole time, but he didn't. But, you know, it's the attitude. It's always your attitude. And it said, flip it over. I don't care what people think of Tiger Woods, his personal life. I know some people that know him personally. But there was an old story of Tiger on the golf course. He was about 3 shots down with about 6 holes to play. And Steve Williams, his old caddy, said when Tiger, he said, I knew how to make him mad. I knew how to get him, rile him up. I knew how to motivate him. And he said, Ty, do you ever notice when so-and-so makes a putt over there, his little girlfriend's over there just a clapping and a smiling? Well, he said it ticked him off, threw his club down and walked off. On 17, he made a birdie putt to go 1 shot up, going into hole 18, 1 up. And he said when he made that birdie putt, all he did was walk by me, threw the putter at me, slapped me on the butt, said she ain't smiling now, and went right to the 18th hole, won that tournament. That is I get chills every time I tell that story. That's the attitude you got to have. It's right there. He didn't let it fluster him. He focused in. He honed in on it. He knew he was 3 down, 6 to go. Okay, if I can birdie, I can take this. He focused. He honed in. And he got to flip the club at him and slap Steve right on the rear and said, she ain't smiling now. So, you know, that's the attitude you got to have. And especially for President Trump. Like that's what he's doing over there. So take the attitude that he has, listen to the man when he talks, listen to his words, and then go seek to know what that dash means. And then you'll go, you know, now I do want every liberal and every Democrat possible that can come over. I do. It's the leave the man behind mentality. But, you know, you can still go, you ain't smiling anymore. Y'all ain't saying all them slurs anymore. The more this stuff comes out. That's the attitude you got to have. And that's
Amen,
what makes me
friend.
tick on it. That's
Amen.
what makes me tick on a daily basis. You know, so.
Absolutely. Mark, anything else you want to leave us with?
You know, every day, and we've had this discussion before, every day I get up and my wife and I have discussed this a million times. I know you and I, Dave, have discussed this a million times. Why me? Why am I awake? Why is all this stuff? And when you sit and you look at it, there's no doubt about the fact that everything that's transpired for us, everything that we've been privy to learn and to see and to understand has been divine intervention. You know, I don't care if you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. But you can see that it's divine intervention and it's a spiritual thing. And while you sit there and you say to yourself, you know, why me? You know, you've been chosen for a reason, and we've all got our little part in it. And a lot of the times, I know people get a kick out of watching Big Mike and Ball Chin Man and this and that and the other. But when you look at the video of Ball Chin Man, there were things that I chose, clips in there that I chose specifically to get to the point of look at what they've done to us. Look what we have allowed them to do to us. And this is now 2024. In what's allegedly the greatest country in the world. And there shouldn't be anybody in this country who is homeless, who is hungry, who is struggling, who's concerned about where the next meal or the next paycheck or anything else is coming from. And this is what we've allowed to happen. But we also know, because we are awake and we know what the plan is, that much, much, much greater times are coming for us. And we're going to celebrate in those times. So for everybody who's sitting back and, every time there's a setback going, woe is me, when is this going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Rejoice in what we know. And rejoice in the fact that these better times are coming, that we're in a war, but this war's already been won. We're just waiting for the other people to realize it. So sit back, enjoy, do what you can to help other people, and let's all move forward into this next phase of reality. And Derek, always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Well said.
Likewise.
Well said. Well said. As President Trump says, the best is yet to come. And don't forget, it's almost October already. That's kind of crazy to say, but it is. May of 2025, a year-long celebration of America. Year-long. I'll tell you one thing. There's got to be a lot of stuff that changes right quick if we're going to have a year-long celebration, right?
A lot.
Hang your hat on that. Donald Trump promised us a lot. Absolutely. And It can change on a dime. Remember that.
Okay.
This has been absolutely fantastic. And, go back and watch this again. I'm going to have clips of Derek's monologue there about the laws and orders cut for all you guys. That's the kind of stuff, share it with people. That monologue that Derek did, that Mark asked him to do with all the laws and orders, there's nothing in there about Q. There's nothing in there about masks. That's the kind of stuff you want to share, especially at this time, because look, the rest of it is all going to play itself out. You can see how everything is being set up, how the media is being exposed. We didn't even get into that tonight, that the media exposure has reached a whole new level, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch. You have everybody in the world blaming the media for the incitement of riots and the incitement of violence against Trump. It's a brilliant thing to see. Couple of quick housekeeping items before we get out of here. Number one, thank you again to all of our moderators, Carrie, Kat, Claudia Rose, Doug, for everything you do. You're doing a great job in the chat tonight. Thank you to everybody here. Your participation, I say it all the time, still needs to be repeated. Your participation is equal as important to any of us who are here on the screen or with the next channel or any of that other stuff. It doesn't work without you guys. You're all playing a role in this, whether you know it or not. Consider hitting that like button, please. It does help out, especially a show like this, more so than even the other shows we do. Derek's the kind of guy we want to get out to more new people. That helps the algorithm. So if you do have a Rumble account, please hit that thumbs up. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, we are streaming on Locals now. So if there are any people here that are Locals members, there's a button below for that. You don't have to do it. It's the same show that you get everywhere else, but there are people that choose to support. That's below. And if you do, you can watch on Locals as well. We just added that. And then coming up the rest of this week, we have Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi tomorrow night from Australia One, wrote the foreword to Derek's book. The link to Derek's website, the documents.info, and to his book on Amazon, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, is in the description below, and the mods have been putting it in the chat. If you like what you see, or maybe you're new here, or you like listening to Derek and you want more info on that, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, that's the book to get on Amazon, and it's been doing fantastic. It's a #1 in its category, which should really tell you a lot about where people's minds are, that there are people buying this stuff. And what else this week? I said Rick. Oh, and then Sunday we'll have another episode of Respect. Mark, you want to just say something real quick about that?
Before you get to that, don't forget on Friday we've got Truth Stream with Joe and Scott again.
Oh yes, we'll be over on
Correct.
their channel. That's right. Yes, we're doing it's Scott's thirty on Friday, so they're having a big round table. They've invited Mark and I to be on. That will be at 9 o'clock Eastern on their Rumble channel. I think we're probably going to stream it here too, but either way, stay tuned on Telegram. And that is another quick thing.
promised cake.
I'm sorry.
And Dave promised cake.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Cake.
Man,
screwed me up
that
there,
is,
Mark.
you know what they call that? You know what they call that in the military? That's called a Blue Falcon right there. He just threw you right under the bus right there. Right there.
Yeah.
Just push you right on under it.
And then on Sunday,
Telegram. Thank you. Real quick, Mark. One more thing. That's what I wanted to say. I told you at the top of the show, if you go to newstreason.com, it's on the screen. That goes to our link tree. It was brought to my attention the other day by some of the mods. There's a lot of people apparently that watch on Rumble that don't follow us on Telegram. You're missing out. That's where we post all of the news stories, all of our commentary on what's going on, and most importantly, all the show promos. So if you're not following there, you go to newstreason.com. That's got everything in there. The Telegram channel, the chat channel, which is a separate Telegram channel. There's over 5,000 people in there throughout the day. That's how you can interact with each other. So in case you don't follow us now, go there, newstreason.com. That's got all of our links. And then Mark, real quick, you want to talk about respect on Sunday?
and I know I say it all the time, but this Sunday is a very, very special respect, because what we're doing is we are premiering what will essentially be the pilot for a new show on the channel, featuring one of our mods, Kat, and Bishop James O'Connor. And it should be a very, very interesting show, taking us to dealing with where we're going and how people can help to be helped to cope with what we're going into. So I think it's going to be a great learning experience for a lot of people, and I hope you'll tune into that and help support them.
There's just one more thing. I got to give a shout out. I got to give one shout out to someone in the comment box. The second most important thing in this whole show. Roll Tide, baby. Roll Tide. I saw it. I had to say it. I had to. I got to.
A lot of Crimson Tide fans in the chat today. I saw that. The last thing before I go, I also want to say something. I know I mentioned on the other show, but I just want to thank everybody from our crew that's here, that's been involved in 17switch.com. You guys have heard me talk about that. It's really vastly exceeded my expectations. We've had hundreds of people switch over already. It's a great way to take your dollars away. And as I've said to you before, all the people involved at that, all the people you'll speak to, the people that would help you out, run you through it, are literally all people from this community, from our chat room, from our Rumble channel. It's us helping each other. It's not a third party. It's not a call center. It's not some foreign company and that kind of stuff. So, but I just wanted to say a special thank you to everybody that's involved with that. We're about a month in. It's been incredible. And I look forward to keeping it going. So thank you to everybody involved with that. And
also thank you to everybody out there who has helped us in the 8 months that we've been in existence now to surpass 33,000 registered viewers on Rumble. Because without you, we're three idiots sitting here talking to each other. So thank you for all your support, man.
This guy is as Blue Falcon and all night. Man, he just called me an idiot. Now, he can call you that if he wants to. If you want to take that, but talking about three idiots. Now, you can speak for yourself.
I consider myself a moron, not an idiot. So that's just how I go. But anyway,
I know where that cake would go if we really had one. It's going in your face. Ain't nobody going to be eating cake unless it's off your face.
Man, this is going to be fun when we all finally get together in the same place. It's going to be a good time. Mark and Derek and everybody watching, thank you all so much. This has been a great time tonight. I look forward to doing it again. And thank you to everybody that watched. God bless you all. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Have a good night.
We'll see y'all.